Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everyone for their patience. I want to welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Senate and Assembly Joint Select Committees on Redistricting and Elections. Today we are hearing one measure, Senate Bill 1, relating to the districts for the United States House of Representatives, the Nevada State Senate, and the Nevada Assembly. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Lang. Here. Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Doniate. Senator Goycochea. Here. Senator Severs-Gansert. Senator Buck. Here. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Here.
Assemblyman Frierson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblyman Leavitt. Assemblyman Matthews.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblywoman Wynn.
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Here.
Chair Orenshaw.
Here. Madam Secretary, please mark any members who were not present as they arrive. I would like to start with a few housekeeping remarks for members of the audience and anyone who's watching online or waiting on the phone lines to testify. If you wish to testify today on Senate Bill 1 or during the public comment period, please place your name on the sign-in sheet in the back of the room here in Carson City. The committee uses this information to invite interested persons to testify. Please remember to turn your microphone on and clearly state and spell your name. And if you represent an organization, please state the name of that organization that you represent before you begin your testimony. Please be sure to identify yourself for the record each time you speak. If you're participating by phone or via the Zoom technology, you will be asked to unmute when it is your turn to speak. Please remember that comments will be limited to no more than 3 minutes per person. You are welcome to submit any additional comments in writing, and they will be added to the legislative record for this meeting. Please turn off your cell phones or set them to silent mode. Please step out of the committee room if you need to take a phone call. The documents and handouts that were submitted ahead of time have been uploaded to Nellis. Since we may be examining various tables and data sheets, hard copies may be provided. Please note that some committee members will be reviewing these documents on their laptops. As set forth on the agenda, public is strongly encouraged to submit written testimony via email at the following email address: senscre@scn.state.nv.us or via fax at 775-684-6522. There will be a period of public comment at the end of today's meeting. If you wish to present testimony by telephone, please call the following phone number, area code 669-900-6833, and enter meeting ID 839-9797-4355, followed by the pound sign. We will now begin the hearing on Senate Bill 1. Our Legislative Council Bureau staff has been asked to present only the factual highlights of Senate Bill 1 and describe the geographic, population, and demographic features of the redistricting plans that are set forth in Senate Bill 1. The LCB staff will not be able to explain or answer questions relating to rationale or reasons for a particular mapping choice. Instead, LCB staff will cover the informational aspects involved in Senate Bill 1. We are privileged today to have Michael Stewart, the Research Director of the LCB Research Division, Haley Prohl, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with the Research Division, and Kathy Steinle, Redistricting Specialist with the Legislative Council Bureau's Information Technology Services Division. They're here to help go over Senate Bill 1 for us. Please welcome and please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, and Chair Miller, and members of the Senate and Assembly Select Committees on Redistricting and Elections. As the chair noted, I am Michael Stewart with the Research Division of the Legislative Council Bureau, and joining me today is Haley Prohl, our Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with the Research Division, and Kathy Steinle, GIS Specialist with the LCB's Information Technology Services Unit. Now, today we've been asked to provide factual information regarding the reapportionment redistricting plan set forth in Senate Bill 1 of the 33rd special session. And before we begin, I must remind you as you've heard from LCB staff in the past, it's our standard LCB disclosure that as central nonpartisan staff, We cannot advocate for the passage or defeat of any legislation, or in this case, any reapportionment or redistricting proposal. We are here today to present only basic factual information about the redistricting proposal in SB 1 impacting the U.S. House of Representatives, the Nevada State Senate, the Nevada State Assembly, and we will not be able to answer questions relating to the rationale of why a district boundary may have been drawn one way and not the other, as these were decisions that were made by the authors of the bill. With each plan, Ms. Pearl will start with an explanation of the key geographic components and features of the overall plan and some district-specific information. Ms. Steinle will follow with an overview of district population and relevant deviation information from ideal population, as well as other related statistics. And finally, I will highlight certain information regarding race and ethnic minority concentrations and related features in select legislative districts. So you should have before you today copies of the associated maps and tables. And for members of the public and those following over the internet, all of this information has been uploaded to the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System, otherwise known as NELIS. And so with that, I will turn it over to start with Ms. Pearl, who will begin with the key geographic features of the congressional plan set forth in SB 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. For the record, Haley Pearl, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with LCB. So we're starting with the congressional plan. Nevada has 4 congressional seats as determined by the 2020 census results. This is the same number of seats Nevada currently has. Nevada neither gained nor lost a seat as a result of the census. The congressional plan in SB 1 establishes 4 distinct geographical districts. District 2 is in northern Nevada. District 4 comprises Central Nevada and Northern Clark County, and Districts 1 and 3 are wholly contained within Clark County. District 3 contains western parts of the Las Vegas core and extends down to the southern tip of the state. District 1 contains eastern parts of the Las Vegas core, as well as Henderson and Boulder City, and the North Las Vegas area is within Congressional District 4. Except for Clark County, Lyon County is the only county that is divided in the congressional plan between districts 2 and 4. And that's a brief overview of the geographic layout of the congressional plan, and I will turn it over to Kathy Steinle.
Thank you, Haley. For the record, my name is Kathy Steinle. I'm with the ITS unit with the Legislative Council Bureau. For the congressional districts, they have a nearly even population. There's 776,154 people in districts 1 and 3, and there's 776,153 in districts 2 and 4. Please note that the ideal population is calculated by dividing the number of districts into the total state population. Thus, 3,104,614 divided by 4 equals 776,153.5. Therefore, due to rounding, the deviation numbers are actually 0.50 for districts 1 and 3 and minus 0.50 for districts 2 and 4. By adding the largest positive deviation to the largest negative deviation, the result is an overall range of deviation of 1, which is 0.0%. Thank you.
Also in the congressional district plan, I will kind of just highlight on page 2 of the tables that you have there, just sort of the top categories of each racial category for your information. So for the white alone category, that the top number there, as you can see, is Congressional District 2 with 67.65%. Black or African American, that includes Black or African American with another race, as reported by the Census Bureau, is the high district there is 19.39% in Congressional District 4. American Indian, Alaska Native, including American Indian and Alaska Native with any other race, the high district there is District 2 with 4.90%. Asian, including Asian with other races. The high district is district number 3 at 21.12%. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, those are pretty evenly dispersed, but district number 3 has the high there at 2.35%. Some other race alone, 2 categories are pretty close in numbers. That's Congressional District 1 with 17.97% and District 4 with 18.29%. You'll notice in the 2 or more race category, and this is going to be consistent through everything you'll see today, there's very similar disbursement or distribution of that particular race category across all the plans that you'll be looking at today. And then with regard to Hispanic or Latino of any race, the similar numbers for District 1 is 35.45% and District 4 at 34.88%. So that kind of covers the main features, geographic, population, and race and ethnicity for a congressional plan. And I'll turn it back over to Haley to cover Senate.
Haley Pearl for the record. The Senate plan in SB 1 establishes 21 Senate districts, 15 of which are wholly within Clark County, 5 of which are in western Nevada, including 2 wholly within Washoe County, and 1 of which includes the eastern part of the state and parts of Clark County. In addition to Clark and Washoe counties, 4 counties are divided among Senate districts in the plan. Those 4 counties are Elko, Eureka, Lander, and Nye. All assembly districts are nested within the Senate districts. So this means that for each Senate district, it wholly contains 2 assembly districts. And in the tables for the Senate plan, you will find the pairings of the assembly districts for each Senate district. Kathy?
Thank you. For the record, my name is Kathy Steinle, IT Services with the Legislative Council Bureau. So in this plan, the ideal population for a 21-district Senate plan is 147,839. In this plan, the largest positive deviation is in District 5, and it is 1,400, which is 0.95%. The largest negative deviation is in District 17, and it's minus 3,453, which is minus 2.34%. Therefore, the overall range of deviation is 4,853, which is 3.28%.
Thank you, Kathy. Again, Michael Stewart for the record. And then again, turning to the racial data report on page 2, I will just highlight the high numbers at this point. I do have the low numbers if you'd like those. But so the high numbers in each race category for white alone is in proposed Senate District 16 at 73.4%, District 17 at 77.1%, 19 at 71.61%, and 20 at 73.1%. For Black or African American, the high districts there are District 1 at 26.77, District 3, 17.32, 4, 28.94, 10 at 19.65. For American Indian and Alaska Native, the high districts are District 13 at 4.44%, District 14 at 6.31, District 17 at 6.38, and District 19 at 4.64. For Asian, including Asian with none other race, the high districts are District 8, 18.87, District 9, 26.13, District 11 at 30.46, and District 12 at 18.45. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, high districts there are District 11 at 3% and 12 at 3.34%. Some other race alone, again, as reported by the Census Bureau, kind of 4 high districts stand out is District 2 at 39.48, District 4 at 28.75, 13 at 19.22, and District 21 at 29.13. Two or more races, again, as I mentioned before, pretty evenly dispersed from a low of 10.71% in District 17, and it appears a high of two districts have the same number, District 2 at 17.48 and District 20 at the same, 17.48. And then finally, Hispanic or Latino. Our high districts there are District 2, 64.72, 4 at 48.51, 7 at 38.38, 10 at 33.62, 13 at 36.07, and District 21 at 52.31. And so that kind of covers the fact of the Senate plan. I'll turn it back over to do Assembly, to Haley. Thank you.
For the record, Haley Pearl, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist. The Assembly Plan in SB1 establishes 42 Assembly districts, 30 of which are wholly within Clark County. There is one additional district that is in the south that contains part of Clark County, as well as parts of Nye and Lincoln. There are roughly 10 districts in the west. 6 are wholly within Washoe County. One district contains parts of Washoe, Elko, Eureka, Lander, Humboldt, and Pershing counties. One district contains parts of Washoe, all of Carson City and Story counties. One district includes all of Churchill, Esmeralda, Mineral, Lyon, and Nye counties, and parts of Lander. And one additional in the west contains all of Douglas County and part of Lyon. And then Assembly District 33 contains the eastern part of the state and extends from Elko down to Lincoln and Nye counties. So in addition to Clark and Washoe counties, the counties that are divided among Assembly districts in this bill are Elko, Eureka, Lander, Lincoln, Lyon, and Nye. And again, all Assembly districts are nested within Senate districts. So 2 Assembly districts will be within 1 Senate district. Thanks.
Kathy Steinle, ITS with Legislative Council Bureau. The ideal population for a 42-district assembly plan is 73,919. In this plan, the largest positive deviation is in District 22 and has 876, which is 1.18%. The largest negative deviation is in District 38, and it is minus 1,736, which is minus 2.35%. Therefore, the overall range of deviation is 2,612, which is 3.53%.
Again, Michael Stewart for the record with the Research Division of Legislative Council Bureau. So looking at the similar statistics that I pointed out in the other plans for Assembly, we're looking at for the top numbers for white alone is in District 19 at 73.72, 23 at 72.47, District 31, 70.83, 33, 73.07, District 36 at 70.14, 38 at 73.96, 39 at 80.2, and 40 at 71.71. Black or African American, the high districts here in this plan are District 1, 21.3%, District 6, 31.72, District 7, 26.14, 15 at 20.99, 17 at 32.24. American Indian and Alaska Native, high districts in the plan are District 24 at 4.42, District 27 at 4.22, District 30 at 4.46%, District 32 at 9.03, 38 at 8.05, District 39 at 4.7, and District 40 at 4.93. For Asian, including Asian with other races, high districts are District 8 at 34.27, District 35 at 26.65, District 41 at 21.57, and District 42 at 23.55. For Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, our high districts are number 9 at 2.61%, 17 at 2.35%, 21 at 2.60%, 35 at 2.81%, and 41 at 4.09%. Some other race alone, the high districts are District 6 at 33.64%, 11 at 39.5%, District 14 at 33.28%, and District 28 at 39.39%. And again, as I mentioned, lots of equal disbursement for 2 or more races, with a low of 10.04% in District 38 and a high of 17.79 in District 14. And then finally, for Hispanic or Latino, the high districts, high percentage districts are District 6 with 54.04%, District 7 at 42.94%, District 10 at 41.7%, 12 at 46.79%, District 14 at 57.83%, and District 28 at 64.38%. And so those are the facts that the LCB was tasked with kind of highlighting for you for SB1. I know it's a lot of numbers and figures, but I guess that's part of what redistricting is all about. So, so with that, I think we'll conclude our presentation, and we'll go from there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Stewart, Ms. Prohl, and Ms. Steinle. Members, are there any questions for the presenters? Please raise your hand. Assemblywoman Nguyen, and then Assemblyman Levitt. Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible, you kind of highlighted it, but is it possible for you to review the Asian American Pacific Islander numbers in the Congressional, Senate, and Assembly races? And is it possible to compare to the 2011 maps?
Thank you again. For the record, Michael Stewart, and Kathy Steinle is a rock star. She brought the 2011 data for us. So, and I think actually, Kathy, you're pulling it up as well? Or okay. So for 2011, for the Asian and Asian with other races category, for CD1 in 2011, it was 9.30, and you can see that comparison now with 10.38. For District 2, it was 5%, and District 2 in this 21 plan is 6.23, and District 3 was 14.485 in 2011 versus 21.12 in 2021, and SB1, excuse me, and then 6.82 in District 4 in 2011, and 7.83 in District 4 for SB1. So that's how those comparisons work for those.
Thank you. Any additional questions, Assemblywoman Nguyen?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Levitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I appreciate the factual information on this. I probably have a lot of questions that maybe you can't answer. Maybe this one you can. Just do we have an idea of who created these maps? Because I'm assuming it wasn't you that created the maps, and so I just was curious to who created the maps and how we, you gave a factual presentation on the maps that were given to you and the numbers that you calculated in accordance with these maps. I just wondered who created the maps.
And perhaps I can jump in here, Assemblyman Levitt.
Thank
you. Each house and each caucus and each house worked with a GIS technician at LCB to make their recommendations, and this bill comes out of that work. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. I just wondered if we were going to have the opportunity to maybe have some dig deeper into that portion of it, Chair.
And I'm Not sure who else will be presenting today, but if there's more information we need, perhaps it can be submitted after the hearing. Senator Buck. Buck, I don't
Wrong
think you're...
button. Thank you, Chair Earnshaw. I'm just wondering, but I guess we got clarity that you did not draw the maps, so it would be hard to answer this question. How did you minimize the deviation within the maps?
Again, Michael Stewart for the record. I'm not sure we can necessarily comment about how those decisions were made in terms of the total overall deviations, both high and low. That was something that the authors of the bill prepared.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have a question from Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I know that you covered it, but could we just go over it again? How do we determine what that deviation is? What is the acceptable deviation between the congressional districts?
For the record, Kathy Steinle, ITS Legislative Council Bureau. I'll explain how we come up with the deviation or with the ideal population. We divide the state total 3,104,614 divided by 4 for the 4 districts, and that comes out to 776,153.5, and that's kind of you can't have half a person. So so there's where the deviations of 0.50 and minus 0.50 come in to districts 1 and 3, and then 2 and 4 respectively.
And then, Mr. Chair, may I have a follow-up?
Oh, please go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for going through that again. And what is the acceptable amount of deviation between congressional districts? What is that number? Could it be a large deviation, a small? What is that acceptable deviation between districts?
And Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, Asher Killian, Committee Counsel, I'd be happy to take that.
Please go ahead, Mr. Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So there are 2 different standards that apply depending on whether the electoral districts in question are legislative districts or congressional districts. Excuse me, congressional districts. The Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution applies to both, and that's what generally requires relatively equal sizes for the districts. For congressional districts, however, Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution also applies, which imposes a requirement that the districts be as nearly equal as is practicable, which is generally interpreted to be as close to exact mathematical equality as possible. So in the case of Nevada, where the ideal population involves half of a person, districts couldn't be exactly mathematically equal because half of people don't exist. So in that kind of a situation, an overall range of 1 person is within the safe harbor established by the Supreme Court. A deviation of more than 1 person is possible if there are other factors that are necessary for the deviation to be greater than 1 person. However, Supreme Court precedent holds that in that case, if deviation is greater than 1 person and any alternative map could be presented that satisfies the same objectives with a smaller deviation, the map with larger deviation will be struck down. So effectively, a deviation of 1 person is the known safe harbor, and this map as presented is within that known safe harbor deviation for a congressional map.
Thank you, Mr. Killian. Any additional questions? If I could piggyback on Assemblywoman Moreno's question, the deviations in state legislative districts proposed here in Senate Bill 1, the highs and the lows in certain districts, how does that compare with the districts that were drawn in 2011 in terms of high lows? If you have that data, and if not, I could try to get it offline.
Kathy Steinle, ITS Legislative Council Bureau. Yes, we have that. In 2011, The largest positive deviation was 0.23%. The largest negative is congressional districts or Senate.
State, Senate and Assembly was what I was interested in.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll start over. I'm sorry. This is for the Senate in 2011. Largest positive was 0.23%. The largest negative was minus 0.57%. And that gives you an overall deviation of 0.80% for the 2011 Senate districts. For the 2011 Assembly districts, the largest positive deviation was 0.52%. The largest negative was minus 0.82%. That gives an overall deviation of 1.33% for the 2011 Assembly districts.
Thank you very much. I believe I have a question from Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have a question just really about process. I'm trying to understand if we have authors of a bill, and LCB is here and has done a good job of giving us the information, the factual information, but if we have questions that lead to trying to understand the intent behind some of the process of redistricting, certain splitting of counties, splitting of communities of interest, who's going to answer those questions?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Hanson. And as I mentioned earlier, each caucus, each house worked with a GIS technician, and this is a product of that work. Certainly during the hearing today, we're going to hear proposed amendments. There have been proposed alternative maps that have been submitted and are online. So there's going to be, quite a discussion about alternatives, but this is what we're working with right now, Senate Bill 1. Do you have any follow-up, any additional questions?
Thank you for a follow-up. I think what'll happen is I'll just ask my questions, I think in a rhetorical manner, put them out there on the record, hoping to get some sort of answers or clarification. I was perhaps thinking, certainly I understand the authors would be, the majority party of these maps that we're looking at, and was hoping that that leadership would maybe be able to answer our questions. This is my first time doing this, so just feeling at a loss to be able to ask the questions that my constituents are asking me to ask about their communities being divided, and so not hoping that the question's just going to float out there, that I can get some answers from the authors of the majority maps.
Well, I appreciate your comments, Assemblywoman Hanson, and certainly Senate Bill 1 is a proposal. It's not a law yet, and I think we're going to have a very robust discussion about it into the late hours today. So with that, I would like to go to Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. And so when I look at these maps, and again, I don't know, I'm going to try not to cross any lines. I'm just trying to figure this out as well because we haven't done this before. But when I look at Washoe County and the registration, I see like a third. I see a third who are registered as Republicans, a third who are registered as Democrats, and then a third who are nonpartisans or other. But then when I look at the two Senate districts, 13 and 15, that are wholly within Washoe County, those are both 6.7 or more percent favoring Democrats. So even though, again, registration is pretty much, it's almost exactly equal. It's 32.7% Democrat, 32.7% Republican, and then 34.7% nonpartisan and other. Both of the districts wholly in Washoe County are supermajority Democrats. And so I'm wondering, how that happens if there was a shift, a substantial shift, especially in Senate District 15, and how that happened. The boundaries were moved. It was what it looks like, and so I just want to have a better understanding. Because when I look at the district, what I see is three significant communities of interest, being Somerset, which is a planned unit community that's actually part of the city of Reno, Verdi, which is also large portions are part of the city of Reno, and I look at Cold Springs, which has also partially been annexed into the city of Reno. Those look like they've been severed and actually moved to the district. So SD 14, that stretches all the way to Elko. So we have these community of interests that are also within the political subdivision of the city of Reno that now have been moved to be part of Senate District 14 instead of 15, and 15 is the one that's wholly in Washoe County. So do you have any comments on that or how that works?
And I'm going to jump in. I'm not sure if that's a question LCB can field or not. I think they're here more to answer technical questions about the demographics in each proposed district. I mean, certainly if there's concerns about whether a community of interest may have been split up, I appreciate your bringing them to the committee, but I'm not sure that that's a question LCB can answer.
Thank you, Chair Charles. Then, there are two exhibits that I submitted. One was the court case from 2011, and the other one was the NCSL's redistricting criteria, which have, and I want to know if these are common principles, because I think NCL introduced them: compactness, contiguity, preservation of counties and other political subdivisions, preservations of communities of interest, preservation of cores of pride districts, and avoiding pairing incumbents. And when I look at NCL's list, and then I look at the court case from 2011, the items that were to be used by the special masters, they were contiguous districts, political subdivisions, communities of interest, general appearance, which should be rectangular or circular, and incumbents. And so when I look at the way that Senate District 14 was redrawn and Senate District 15, what I see is this arc. So I see an irregularity, I see a severing of communities of interest, a severing of political subdivisions. So I just want to know if NCSLs and the masters' considerations, what they were supposed to be considering via the court case in 2011, if those are valid principles for redistricting.
And that's another question that I think that our current presenters, they're not the folks who can answer those questions. Certainly, we've posted what you've submitted, Senator Gansert, in terms of the NCSL criteria for redistricting and that 10-year-old legal decision out of the First Judicial District. They're posted on Nellis. Certainly from what I've watched of the Interim Committee on Redistricting, and no, I believe that those principles were taken into account. And certainly if any member of the body or public has concerns, they can bring those out. Pardon me one second.
Thank you. I think just as long as we know that those are a reasonable basis for redistricting.
Thank you, Senator. I think Mr. Killian might actually be able to opine a little bit about this. Mr. Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So generally in Nevada, just to give a brief overview of some of the principles that apply here in Nevada, the Nevada Constitution imposes a requirement that redistricting done by the legislature be based on census population. Outside of that requirement, the Nevada Constitution imposes no other restrictions or principles on the process. It leaves that to the discretion of the Nevada legislature. That said, there are two elements of federal law that impose requirements on the process, specifically the Equal Protection Clause, which requires districts be of relatively equal population. That's the one person, one vote concept. And then the 14th and 15th Amendments and the Voting Rights Act, which require an equitable treatment of racial and language minorities. Outside of those three requirements imposed by federal law and the Nevada Constitution, the remainder of the principles that guide the redistricting process are up to the legislature itself. In the joint standing rules adopted by the legislature for this special session, the concept of equality of representation is acknowledged as one of the guiding principles for the legislature in Rule 13.1. And then the concept of compliance with the Voting Rights Act is acknowledged by the legislature as a guiding principle in Rule 13.5. Outside of that, all other matters would be up to legislative discretion. The traditional districting principles acknowledged by NCSL are certainly principles the legislature and this committee could take into account when drawing districts, but they are not binding on the legislature in any way unless the legislature chooses to bind itself with those principles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Killian. Senator Gansert, follow-up?
Thank you. And then in 2011, when redistricting went to the courts, the court master had a list of principles that should be applied. Does that hold true now, or is that another one where there's discretion, so we don't necessarily have to follow what the court said back in 2011?
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So generally, when the courts become involved in the redistricting process, they hew much more closely to those traditional districting principles. So since in 2011, after the legislature passed maps and they were vetoed by the governor, the legislature was not called back into special session, so the courts were required to draw the maps. The court did choose to hew pretty closely to those traditional districting principles. However, that's not binding on the legislature itself. Since the legislature gives since the Constitution gives the legislature rather wide discretion in choosing its own principles, so long as the legislature retains control of the redistricting process, it can choose whether or not it wants to follow those principles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Killian. Any additional questions, Senator Ganser?
You know, just kind of going back to the Constitution guaranteeing like equal participation, equal rights for all voters. And my understanding is that citizens have the right to participate equally in the political process, to join with others to advance political beliefs, and to choose their political representatives. And so I guess my concern really is to make sure that we have maps that support that and follow that guarantee. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Gansert. I have a question from Senator Gokachia, and then I'll go to Majority Leader Benitez Thompson, Assemblyman Yeager, and then Assemblywoman Tolles. Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I've got a couple if you'll indulge me.
Please go
but
ahead.
First and foremost, this is a procedural question. We've got SB1 here. Will we be able to, in fact, separate this, the congressional districts and/or the legislative maps, and vote on them separately? In the interest of bipartisanship.
I apologize. Could you repeat your question, Senator Gokachia?
Do you want me to repeat that?
Yep, I'm sorry. I got
Yeah,
distracted.
okay.
for 1 second.
The question is, we've got SB1 here. Will we be able to separate the bill and the congressional districts and vote on them in one set, and then the legislative districts in the other? Just, I think maybe there's be bipartisan support for one set of maps and not the other.
And I don't know that our presenters are the folks who can answer that question. I believe currently Senate Bill 1 is a measure that encompasses all the proposed changes to both the state legislative districts and the congressional districts. So it's currently introduced. I think it would be a vote on everything as presented in the bill. But,
All right.
please, any additional questions, Senator Gokachia?
Just one other, and I guess I'm going to continue to beat on the same thing. And we're here to represent our constituents in the state of Nevada, and I am concerned there wasn't enough consultation done early on, especially as we look at some of the rural areas. And call them whatever you want. You can call them a county, a city. They are a community of interest. They're the ones that elect their school boards, vote on their school bonds, and how we can separate them is beyond me. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, Senator Gokachia. I now have a question from Majority Leader Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. I appreciate the ability to ask a question. I was wondering, Mr. Stewart, if you could share with us, kind of segueing in a little bit into Senator Gokachia was talking about the input process. We did have public meetings. Some of us were on the committee that participated in those public hearings to seek input from communities. I was wondering if you could review so we could capture some of that work on this legislative record about that process. And if you could add to the portal process for the public with submissions of maps.
Thank you again. Michael Stewart for the record. Mr. Chair, to you and through you to Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
You can go directly to the senator or the
great.
Assemblywoman.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Benitez Thompson, as you stated, the legislature embarked most recently in 4 public hearings for the reapportionment redistricting process. They happened on October 7th, October 23rd, October 27th, and 28th in one virtual, one here in Carson City, one in Las Vegas, and one in Fallon. So, and the public was given an opportunity to participate. And what the committee heard, actually in presentations, was kind of a truncated version, actually, of what the interim study and the previous interim kind of heard as well, which was information about U.S. Census data. And I don't have SCR 13 in front of me, but that's off the top of my head, it's U.S. Census data. We heard information about the history of reapportionment and redistricting and how the legislature looked over time. some detailed legal presentations from our legal team, and then some presentations from our state demographer. And then in the previous interim, we heard from the Complete Count Committee and sort of the census operations in Nevada. And then I think, as you mentioned, we had some considerable discussion about how the public could participate through the My Districting application on the legislature's website. And I know Haley kind of presented that information, but the My Districting application was something that was new for this go-around, so the public could submit plans that way. So I could get into more detail, but it was kind of a robust schedule in October, and then of course we had some talking before the last session as well.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Majority Leader? I just have one quick question to piggyback on that. How many proposed maps have been submitted on the My Districting app on the legislature's website?
I think Ms. Stein, they can pull that up right now, or pretty quickly anyway.
Thank you. And members in the queue for questions, I have Assemblyman Yeager, Assemblywoman Tolles, Assemblyman Matthews. If there's someone I'm missing, Senator Dunyate, anybody else who wants to be recognized, please let me know.
Kathy Steinle, ITS Legislative Council Bureau. We've had for our congressional plan, we have had 33 plans submitted. For our Senate, we have had 5. For our Assembly, we've had 4, and we have 1 for Board of Regents.
Thank you very much. It's good to see so many people participating. Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this question is specifically about the legislative maps, the Assembly and the Senate. As Senator Ganzert had referenced in this handout, one of the principles that the legislature could choose to follow would be compactness. And it's listed here as meaning having the minimum distance between all parts of a constituency, a circle, square, or hexagon being the most compact district. And as Mr. Killian noted, the legislature is not obligated to abide by that principle, but certainly the court in 2011 did abide by that principle in drawing the maps. So my question is, the maps that are presented in Senate Bill 1 for the Assembly and the Senate, can you speak to the compactness of those maps in Senate Bill 1 as compared to the compactness of the current maps that were drawn by the court in 2011?
This is Michael Stewart for the record. I don't have I think we'd have to sort of take some time to maybe do a geographic compactness analysis or some sort of overlay, since it's the proposed same number of districts. We could attempt to do that for you if you'd like, so you could kind of do that comparison and see visually how those districts kind of match up. They'll definitely different boundaries for sure.
Please, any follow-up, Assemblyman Yeager? And if that's something you want, maybe we could ask LCB to try to put that together for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly not trying to make anyone do any more work. And just curious if that's something that you're able to opine on through a statistical analysis or comparison of maps. I certainly would appreciate that. I know that time, we have a lot to get through today, but if you're able to, would appreciate it. But at this time, Mr. Chair, I have no additional follow-ups.
Thank you. I have Assemblywoman Tolles.
Thank you so much, Chair. Appreciate. I have a number of questions, but I'll keep the first one, I think, to our legal representative, and then I believe the rest could be directed to LCB, and I'll try and keep them data focused for the most part. So you spoke a little bit about the interim redistricting committee. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about what were the recommendations of that interim redistricting committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Council. Unfortunately, I don't have the sheet of recommendations in front of me. I can try to pull that up real quick. I know they made recommendations regarding provisions to be included in the joint rules, regarding staff to be hired and equipment to be purchased for the legislature's use during the redistricting process, and a few other related matters. But I think Mr. Stewart may be just about to bail me out and pull that up himself. It might be helpful if you proceed to another question so he can pull that up to bail me out real quick.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Killian. Assemblyman Tolles, do you mind going to another question, and perhaps Director Stewart can come back with an answer to your first question?
Sure, thank you so much. I appreciate the teamwork here. So it was a few of those principles or priorities have been mentioned so far, things like compactness. So let me just start with that one. When I look at this map, and I don't know if it's online, but Assembly District 33 under this proposed map would be, as I understand it, the largest assembly district in the United States. And so I wonder about the future representative for that district and their ability to really meaningfully connect with all their constituents over so many square miles. Thank you.
Michael Stewart, for the record. District 13 is a large district. We haven't done any comparisons of how it compares to other districts nationwide. So, but it's a large district. I'd probably, I can't comment about how a representative would be able to, capture all those communities. I would say we have folks on this panel or on this committee who have very large districts, so they might be better able to kind of comment about how they're able to accommodate those large geographies.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Additional follow-up, Assemblyman Tolles?
Yes, thank you. So my next question, if we're able to go back to those recommendations, and then I have 4 specific follow-up questions in regards to just numbers of districts that would meet, in particular, the recommendation of not splitting communities of interest. And that would just be a data question. I'm just looking for numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. I can, again, Michael Stewart for the record. I think Mr. Killian, hit on all the recommendations, but I'll just go through and tell you what they were. For bills, the interim committee did suggest one bill draft request to increase from 3,000 to 5,000 the number of maximum number of active voters permitted in an election district. The legislature did approve that bill this last session. Other recommendations involved, as Mr. Killian pointed out, the purchasing of redistricting software licenses, and then the required parallel hardware to assist the Nevada Legislature's reapportionment and redistricting exercises through its GIS. And as you know, they approved the hiring of 4 session-only employees, GIS technicians, 1 assigned to each caucus, in order to assist with GIS support and provide related services during the 2021 session. And of course, the data was delayed, so here we are several months after the session as well. They also voted to select for use during the redistricting exercise an elections database that includes comprehensive election information from several competitive elections. And those competitive elections are actually set forth in the tables that you have, I think, on pages 3, 4, and 5 on in each plan. So in addition to selecting those elections, they made some suggestions for the adoption of rules, for the joint standing rules for the Senate and the Assembly. There's kind of a list of them, but most of the proposals were to mirror the rules from the 2011 process. So I do think one of the new ones was the nesting of Assembly and Senate districts. That was suggested as well, because that seems to be a popular aspect of your current redistricting plan. So that's one thing that interim committee suggested. And those were the recommendations. And then, I'm sorry, you may need to repeat that second question about, sorry.
Thank you. And
Assemblywoman
I just
Tolles.
want to make sure I'm still good with the chair.
Oh, yes, please go ahead. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, sir. So these are just in regards to counties, cities, communities of interest, tribal communities. Do we know, based on the current plan, how many counties? I'll just start one by one to make it a little easier. So in the proposed plan that we're considering in SB1, how many counties would be split into various representation by districts in this new plan?
Haley Pearl, for the record, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with LCB. I can answer that for the Senate plan and Assembly plan.
Yes.
Okay, so in the Senate plan, there are 6 counties split: Clark, Elko, Eureka, Lander, Nye, and Washoe. And for the Assembly plan, the counties that are split are Clark, Elko, Eureka, Lincoln, Lander, Lyon, Nye, Washoe.
Thank you so much. And follow up to towns.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And how many towns do we know offhand that are being split in the Senate and Assembly proposed plans?
Haley Pearl, for the record, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with LCB. We have not done that analysis yet, but that is something we could take a look at, which places are divided with these plans.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then I know there's been a lot of interest in our tribal communities, and as I was looking at 32 and 31 on the maps, it appeared that there was a split through a reservation. I'm just wondering if we have any data on these plans and how certain tribal communities might be split.
Haley Pearl, for the record, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with LCB. We have not done a close analysis of that yet, but that is also something we could do. The Census Bureau does provide boundaries for American Indian Reservation and colony areas, but we do not have that data today.
That's okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate you have had so much data to crunch. But I do think that that's important to constituents and to communities. And then my last question would be in regards to homeowners associations and planned communities that would share the same boards. I know that that's probably going to be the same answer because that's quite broad. In fact, some of the examples that I see are Somerset in Washoe County split into Sun Valley, split into 3. We have certain, back to the areas of Washoe Valley, Pleasant Valley, Hidden Valley, and even a split in Desert Willow Golf Course. And so I think if there's any way that we could just take a look at how we're splitting up HOAs and communities of interest there. I know we all love to hear from our HOA constituents, and they're very actively involved, and I'm sure they'd like to hear from us as well as to how these plans will impact their representation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Tolles. And LCB, the question about towns, HOAs, and Native American tribes, is that something that can be readily attained, or perhaps not today, but
to say that. Okay, Michael Stewart, for the record. We're having a quick confab here to see what our wonderful GIS teams can put together.
I can follow up offline too.
I think that would be possible. We might have some challenges with figuring out HOA boundaries in the time frame, but the others I think we can probably come up with from a GIS perspective.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
have a question from Assemblyman Matthews. Or do you have a follow-up, Assemblyman Tolles?
Thank you. I just remembered one last criteria, and that was competitiveness, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So how do we define competitiveness, or what constitutes a swing district?
Haley Prohl, for the record, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with LCB. And legal might be a better answer for this, but I can throw out there what we did for considering which elections were selected in the redistricting database. We were selecting competitive elections, and the basis for that was the smallest percent winning margin. So the smaller the percent winning margin between the two candidates of the major parties, those are more competitive on a relative scale, but.
Maybe like plus or minus 4% would be considered competitive, somewhere around that, how we define small.
Again, I don't know if the current presenters have that information. That's not something I'm sure they can answer.
Okay.
I don't know if it is, please jump in, but I just don't know if this is a question that
Sure.
that they can answer.
Haley Prohl again for the record. I do have the percent differences for the elections that were chosen for the database. The smallest percent difference was 0.47 for the 2018 Attorney General contest. The 2018 contest for Secretary of State was the next lowest percent difference at 0.66%. The two presidential elections, their percent differences were greater than 2, I think, for 2016. The presidential election had a 2.42% difference winning margin, and for the 2020 election, that was 2.39. So all of those figures were below 3%, if that helps narrow that range down.
Thank you. I appreciate the ability to ask that question. That's helpful data. And I suppose I would kick myself for not stating that I'm just wondering why Assembly District has moved from a 6-point plus Republican advantage to a negative 3.6 Democrat advantage when it only had a 1.4%, minus 1.4% deviation in ideal population.
And again, I'm not sure that's a question that LCB presenters can answer. I have a question from Majority Leader Canizaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our amazing staff at LCB. You guys do such a great job, and we're always so lucky to have you here. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions. I want to first follow up because we talked a bit about deviation in maps, and I know Mr. Killian talked a bit about, specifically like with the congressional maps, we're looking to get close to 1, and we talked about the sort of the half a person. So the maps that are currently submitted are sort of within that allowable amount. But for legislative maps, my understanding is that that deviation is a bit different. It doesn't have to be down to 1 person. Is that accurate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. That is correct, Senator. The much more precise requirement for congressional districts is because Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, the Supreme Court has interpreted that to impose a requirement that they be as nearly equal as is practicable. The provision that applies to state legislative districts is just the Equal Protection Clause, which is still a significant requirement of substantial equality, but not nearly as exacting. The case law on state legislative districts is as long as the overall range of deviation is less than 10%, so plus or minus 5% for the districts, that is a minimal range of deviation as long as there is some factor that justifies the deviation. A deviation of an overall range of more than 10% is presumed to be too large unless there is some factor that's necessary that requires that range of deviation. So for state legislative maps, as long as the overall range is under 10%, which I believe, as staff has indicated, for the maps contained in SB1, both sets of maps are well under that range. That would be within the range of deviation that the Supreme Court has held is minimal and acceptable for state legislative districts.
Great, and I think that's exactly what my next question was going to be, was just talking a little bit about what the range is and how these proposed maps in Senate Bill 1 would fall within that deviation. And these are obviously less than 5%. We heard that testimony on either end, so that 10% range. And so it would be within that deviation. I just wanted to make sure that we were clear about the deviation because it is different between some of the maps. So I appreciate that, Mr. Killian. You got ahead of my question, which I'm not surprised by. The next question I wanted to talk a bit about, because we've had some discussion about public testimony and public input. When we were as part of the first interim pre-COVID redistricting interim committee, we did hear a lot about the different software that was available and what we might consider purchasing as a state. And one of the recommendations that I think Mr. Stewart spoke about was this My Redistricting software that we've been using. And that allows individuals, anyone, to sort of come in, draw their own maps, kind of mess with that, and then submit a map for consideration. Is that correct?
Haley Pearl, Senior Policy Analyst, GIS Specialist with LCB for the record. Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Ms. Pearl. And those maps, Ms. Pearl, would be available for anyone to kind of view online as well.
Correct.
And so if somebody were interested in seeing those kinds of maps that had been created using that software, they could just go online and sort of take a look at those and look at what other people have drawn and things like that.
Correct.
I know when we were going through the pages, there also popped up, and I have a couple of questions about this, a page for communities of interest. And so was that also something that was allowed to be submitted via the legislative website in this My Districting software?
Thank you, Senator. Haley Pearl for the record again. Yes, that was an option for users to submit communities of interest.
So if someone had a community interest, and I ask because I actually represent an area where Sun City Summerlin is, and so that I believe there were a couple of communities of interest. Sun City was one, Inspirata was one that had been submitted online.
Correct. Haley Pearl for the record.
Okay, and sort of so those are defined, and then within these maps, are they within like a single Senate district? I believe that Sun City Summerlin is still in Senate District 6, and then Inspirata is within Senate District 12 in these proposed maps.
Haley Pearl for the record. I would not want to say for certain. I haven't done that analysis yet, but that is something we could look at and determine by overlaying those communities of interest into these district maps.
And that we'd be happy to get that answer from you. I believe just personally that they are when I looked at it, because I know that those communities of interest were submitted. And that would have been available for any community of interest, be they an HOA or another sort of whatever falls within this definition of community interest. They could have submitted those on the website as well. Is that right?
Haley Pearl for the record. That's correct.
Okay. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I apologize, Mr. Chair, if that's okay, if I have one more little set of questions.
Please go ahead, Majority Leader. Please go ahead.
Just sort of going until you cut me off. So we talked a little bit about compactness, and I know that you haven't done a full compactness analysis of these maps, but as I understand, there are different measures of compactness, one of those being the Polsby-Popper score, and that sort of measures compactness of districts. The closer to one they are, the more compact they are. The further away from one, the less compact they are. And that would be something that we could apply to our maps as currently drawn and to any proposed maps, if we were able to kind of take a look at that. And so I just wanted to, because I was aware of some of the compactness stuff, so I wanted to kind of share, and then I know you're going to do some follow-up on that, but wanted to share and hope that we can kind of get some confirmation on the Polsby-Popper scores for the Assembly average districts, which I believe from the current maps from 2011 is a 0.374, and the maps as submitted is a 0.402. So that being closer to 1, indicating that they're more compact. And then on the Senate maps, I believe that should be a 0.37 on the current maps from 2011 and a 0.384 on the current maps, again, being closer to 1, indicating that they are more compact. And so I know I don't mean to be giving you all a bunch of homework, but I think that was something that was part of these maps. And so would appreciate any follow-up and confirmation on those as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Appreciate your input. Any additional comments from staff on that? None. Thank you very much. Assemblyman Matthews, you've been very patient. Thank you. Assemblyman Matthews.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, and thank you to all three of our presenters. It's good to have you with us here today. I want to stay on this issue of deviation from the ideal, and so my questions would be for Ms. Steinle. And I know you covered these numbers, but I just want to sort of recap and make sure that I've got these right. So under the plan put forward for the legislative maps in SB 1, I believe you said that the overall range in deviation for the Senate would be 3.28%, and for the Assembly it would be 3.53%. Do I have that correct?
Kathy Steinle, Legislative Council Member. Yes, you do. Those are the right
Thank
numbers.
you. And I think you also said that for the 2011 maps, the comparable numbers for the Senate, it was 0.80%, and for the Assembly, 1.33%. Is that correct as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. And so looking at this would seem to me that we've got a significant increase here in the overall deviation from 2011 to the present maps. Looks like 3, even 4 times greater. I don't know if this is something that any of our presenters can speak to, or if you can speak to, but I am wondering, why the maps in this plan do have such a significant increase in deviation over 2011.
And I'm not sure if any of the presenters can speak to that. If they can, jump in, but if not, then that's not anything they can answer at this point. Any additional questions, Assemblyman Matthews?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. We've talked a little bit, I know that Assemblywoman Tolles touched on this idea of splitting counties and splitting towns, and she asked the question if we knew how many towns were being split with these maps. In my looking at it, it appears, and I know we're going to try to get the specific numbers, it looks like that the congressional maps and the legislative maps would each split 6 towns apiece. And, we know, of course, that in drawing these district lines, one of the things we try to ensure is that, we minimize the amount of, different types of ballots that our hardworking local election administrators have to create. And so with an eye toward that, we do try to take into consideration some of these local government boundaries. So when you look and see this number of towns being split, again, just trying to adhere to some of these principles, would you agree that the more we divert from that and the more towns are split, the more we kind of frustrate the attempts to achieve that goal of respecting local boundaries and minimizing that work for our local election officials?
And Assemblyman Matthews, I'm going to jump in. I'm not sure the presenters can answer that. We might have testimony from election officials, either in support, opposition, or neutral, who might be able to reply to your comments, your concerns, but I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think our presenters can address that. But if I'm wrong, please jump in.
Michael Stewart, LCB Research Division. Yeah, again, it's kind of hard for LCB staff to sort of discuss kind of the rationale about where splits went, where they did not go, and that sort of thing. So that again might be something, for I guess for a different person. But I would say that we have heard from the local election officials that they do have, that it's easier for them to do have some, I guess preserve those fewer ballot styles. So, and they've commented on that in public settings before. So,
Any follow-up, Mr. Matthews?
If I may, please, Mr. Chair. We heard some discussion of the community outreach meetings that were held around the state to try to seek public input into this process. I don't know if the presenters know, or maybe somebody knows, were any maps presented at any of these meetings?
Sorry, we're trying to remember. Hold on. There were so many. Was it just Mr.? Right. I believe we had one person, Mr. Darby, might have referenced a map that he submitted on the My Districting page. We can review, but I think that's the one we had.
Thank you very much, Director Stewart. Any additional questions, Mr. Mathers?
One final question, if I may, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for letting me ask so many. And I'm wondering if someone can speak to the decision to include as the description of these districts a picture as opposed to, say, actual descriptions of streets or even coordinates. And I'm just wondering if someone can speak to what the reasoning was for that and what the aims of taking that approach may have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Mr. Killian, and you can go directly to Assemblyman Matthews. You don't have to go through the chair or anybody who's speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So that is a departure with the bill drafts for this special session as compared to previous redistricting bills that the legislature has done. Previously, the bill would contain a list of census geographies for each district, which is effectively just a recreation of the contents of a shapefile. The approach that the bills took this time around is to adopt the shapefile itself directly. And so it's adopting the best evidence of those contents rather than recreating those contents in text form in the bill. And then the images that are contained in the bill are just a descriptive representation of the contents of that shapefile. So this time around, the legislature is actually adopting the best possible evidence of those boundaries in a standard format that any sort of GIS or redistricting software could import, as opposed to a list of text that is only a representation of those boundaries. And then, as I mentioned, the maps are included in the bill not as operative legal language, but as a description of the contents of the shapefile so that you can verify the shapefile contains the maps that you're expecting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Killian. Yep, thank you. Majority Leader Canizaro.
Thank you for the second go around, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. But I did just have like a follow-up question that I wanted to make sure, and I apologize, Mr. Killian, but you are the legal brains in the room. So we were talking a little bit about deviation, and my prior question was mostly related to the question is really whether or not the deviation falls within that 5% on either side or the 10% range. For legislative maps, and this particular proposed map in Senate Bill 1, the proposed maps do fall within that particular range. You also mentioned that we would look at other factors to sort of, help to illustrate why or why not there may be deviations that are different, and that would be part of the sort of analysis on a deviation. Would things like preserving rural representation and rural seats and not taking those away from rurals be something that could be considered with respect to deviations?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. That's generally correct, Senator. So the equality of population within the districts is one of several factors that the legislature considers when drawing lines. All of the factors considered in redistricting, all of the traditional principles in addition to the mandatory principles, can come into conflict. The underlying political geography, city boundaries, county boundaries, state boundaries, can be irregularly shaped. And in attempting to maintain the integrity of that underlying political geography, districts may be less compact or may have less equal population as a result of preserving those underlying boundaries. Other issues like, for example, preserving communities of interest in terms of rural representation, that can also be something that the legislature considers as more important than exact population equality, and use that as a factor to justify deviations in population that may be greater than precise equality. When the special masters drew the maps in 2011, one of the factors that they were prioritizing above all others was population equality. So the districts may have been less compact in order to ensure that the population was as equal as possible. That's not a mandatory duty upon the legislature. The legislature can choose to take the other approach and maybe allow for more population inequality so long as it's within constitutional limits in order to prioritize other factors like preserving communities of interest, keeping political geography intact, preserving the cores of prior districts, all sorts of matters like that.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Killian. Any follow-up, Majority Leader? Nope. Senator Doñate, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and of course, Director Stewart and your team for today's presentation. I'm still learning a lot about this process, but I just have a few clarifying questions if you can help me answer them. So within the last few months, we've heard from various communities of interest about how they have been left behind in the process, especially during 2011. And we were made aware during that process in the committee hearings that we had throughout the state that particularly there was one concern of a indigenous community split in half or into two different districts. So based on what we have today in Senate Bill 1, can you clarify or confirm that Walker River Paiute tribe is no longer split?
Haley Pearl for the record, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist, LCB. I can confirm that Walker River Reservation is not split in the Senate and Assembly proposals. And I wouldn't want to comment on the Congressional until I can get a better look at that, because I don't have the exact boundaries in front of me, because I know it's somewhere along the, with Lyon and Churchill boundary lines.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure with the Senate and Assembly maps that was corrected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, can I go ahead and clarify if you will?
Please go ahead. Any follow-up you have?
Under these proposals, does the rural Nevada lose any Senate or Assembly seats?
Stand by while we're looking at some data here.
And members, I've got two more hands after Senator Doñate, but if there's anyone else who has questions that I've missed, please let me know so I can recognize you. I have Assemblyman Levitt and Assemblyman Hansen. Okay. Anybody else? Senator Gansert? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Donate for your patience. So Ms. Pearl is looking up some data from 10 years ago, but we're just kind of doing a quick comparison. It looks like in 2011 there were 4 districts that includes, in the Senate plan, that included groupings of rural counties. And in the Assembly plan, we have 6 that were included in groupings of rural counties. And again, both in 2011 and 21. So 4 in 2011, 4 in 21 for Senate, and 4 in 2011 for the Assembly, or excuse me, 6 for the Assembly in 2011 and 6 in 2021. Those exact boundaries obviously are different, but those I think would be considered kind of rural.
Thank you, sir.
Rural groupings, if that's appropriate.
And Chair, one last question. If
Please go ahead. Thank you, Director.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Last clarification. So we mentioned our favorite word, HOA. In East Las Vegas, HOAs aren't really quite common, and we don't really witness them. So I just wanted to make sure that this was spoken on the record. HOAs are not considered political units or subdivisions, correct? My understanding is that HOAs are classified as private real estate entities. Could you speak on that, please?
Mr. Killian, would you be able to jump in and address Senator Doñate's question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. Yes, so HOAs are not political subdivisions of the state. They are not government organizations in any form. They are a type of private association that is authorized under state law, but they are not a governmental entity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions, Senator? No? Okay, thank you. I have Assemblyman Levitt for a second question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the second opportunity. I got a little stumped when I first asked the question because I didn't want to ask something that you couldn't answer, but one came about. So with this racial data report, as I was looking at it, it looks like the Hispanic and or Latino districts with 40% or more amounted to 7 total, with 40% or more Hispanic or Latino districts. With the Asian or Asian with other races, it was over 20% was 2, and with Black or African American, including Blacks and African Americans with other races, it totaled 5 districts. My question is since I realized that you had the data from previous, how does that compare to the current demographics as we look at it? We're speaking to Hispanic or Latino plus 40%, Asian plus 20, and Black and African American plus 20.
And Mr. Chair, through to Mr. Levitt, were you referring to the Assembly proposal in SB1 or the?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I apologize.
We're looking at the comparison right now. Just one sec. And you want us to take a look at anything over 40%, is that correct?
40 in Hispanic, Latino, 20 in Asian, and 20 in Black and African American.
Okay. Ms. Steinle is going through the chart right now, so.
Well, as she's going through it, I have a
circle back if you'd like.
Follow-up for, probably for Ms. Prohl.
Just go ahead.
As I was looking at the maps, trying to figure out, Inspirata came up, and Inspirata is currently my district in its entirety. And I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at the maps correctly. It looks like the proposed map has Inspirata now split into 3 assembly districts, 23, 41, and 36, and Senate districts 20 and 12 and 19. Am I looking at that right?
Haley Prohl, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist, LCB. I would need to overlay those to get a better idea of those exact boundaries.
I was looking at the map, and it's often hard to read, but it looks like, 23 and what was previously 12 covered the entirety of Inspirata, and now it looks like it's broken up into 3 separate assembly districts and 3 Senate districts at this point. 12 including them, the new 12 including them, and then 20 still covering a large portion of Inspirata, and then it looks like 19 is pulled in there a little bit as well. That's just from I have my glasses on, but I can't see that map that well.
Haley Prohl for the record again, and I can't comment on that yet, but okay. I can take a look at that and follow up.
I appreciate it.
And I think Michael and Kathy are ready with some numbers for the previous question.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt. So in answer to your question, the number of districts over in the Hispanic or Latino category for 2011 in the Assembly, there were 7 of those over 40%, and it looks like for 2021 there are 6. In the Hispanic category. And I think you mentioned the Asian category, is that correct? Those over 20%, it's 3 and 3. So there are 3 districts in 2011 over 20, and SB1 proposes 3 as well. Oh, you asked another category. Okay, we'll do that other category. Stand by. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Ms. Steinle and Ms. Prohl. And appreciate you trying to get that information. Thank you, LCB, for trying to give us all this good information that we need.
And if I may follow up, Mr. Levitt, you were asking 20% for the Black and African American community. Okay, we'll take a look. Thank you. Okay. So for the above 20% districts for 2011, there were 3 in the Assembly. SB1 proposes 5.
Assemblywoman Levitt, any additional follow-up? Or? Okay, thank you. Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to refer back to the submission from Senator Gansert on some of the NCSL redistricting, traditional districting principles used by many states, and particularly the 2 of the 4, the preservation of counties and other political subdivisions and preservation of communities of interest. It had been mentioned earlier, and I'm more than glad to expound about answering a question about a large district. I'm honored to represent 38,000 square miles, 7 counties, as it stands now. But I can tell you, even though I've loved doing that, that particularly for the proposals of Assembly District 33, that is greatly larger than what I have, and the cost of doing so has doubled in fuel costs. Recently, I could tell you 2016 to 2020, it was half the price to travel those miles, and those miles are not done on state dollar. So it is a burden, but one that I gladly bear, and I know I signed up for. As it stands, when we talk about counties, in my existing district of 32, 2 of the 7 counties I represent were split. But as it's proposed, I go to 6 counties, and it splits 4 ways, 4 counties. And overall, the new proposal map splits 8 counties. I'm just curious, and again, this is a rhetorical question because I know you can't answer it, but for the record and for the communities that are concerned, why are we splitting a community such as Carlin, which is a community of interest when we look at employment, and we are splitting the communities from the employees where they work, from where they live. It's been pulled away from Elko, the city of Elko. Elko County is split. Carlin has been split off from that representation over to my district of 32, which historically was 33. So that is a huge concern, and I think we probably know that there had been a submission from Elko to this very fact that they prefer to keep their community of interest, which is very serious and it's very concrete. I think anybody who's been in those areas know how important that community of interest is in that region. And I'm hoping that we'll hear from them when we get to testimony. So I just want to get that on the record, that there is quite a deviation from keeping community of interest whole and keeping counties whole to the degree that we can in a state as large as ours. So thank you for your time and for the hard work that you have put in on this. And I appreciate we put you in a sticky wicket when I sit here and ask you questions that are more about intent rather than just what you have to do. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman. Thank you for your comments. I agree. Thank you, LCB, for all your hard work on this. Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Chair Ornschell. I'm going to pass on any questions right now, but I do want to thank staff for the incredible work that they've done over the last several months, and then particularly since probably Tuesday. I mean, all of your staff are just incredible, and I'm extremely grateful for your help.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Hanson.
Sorry, I did miss, and this actually is something for you all. When we talked about competitiveness or swingy, this word we're using now, swingy seats, And we talked a little bit about what is that definition? What criteria, what percentage for a competitiveness that we were getting into? Could we request that historically? Now, there's been a lot of elections, so maybe in the last 10, 20 years, would we be able to compile what was the average percentage to try to find what it makes a district a swing district? Is it 4%? Is it 10%? Is there a way for us to get a number from LCB on that?
And I'm not sure if that's a question for the presenters or legal, or if it is, please jump in, but if not, then maybe that's not a question that can be answered by our presenters.
Mr. Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. Just to chime in on the legal side of it, there is no legal requirement in Nevada for competitiveness to be a factor that's considered. So there is no legal standard for what constitutes a competitive district versus a non-competitive district. In other states that use competitiveness as a criteria, it's typically expressed in a squishy way, just that as many districts as possible should be drawn so that electoral results may change from year to year, but most states don't apply any particular percentage to that. That said, as a research request, I think certainly there's value to what you're asking for, but from a legal perspective, there's not necessarily any percentage that's tied to that concept.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Assemblyman Hanson?
Thank you for that clarification. And yes, just from the point of view of research, if we don't use that as a factor in Nevada, but there's been an awful lot of talk in the, as the maps have been presented about what seats are considered swing. So I think it would be helpful to the populace to know historically what is swing. Where has that been falling in Nevada elections? So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also want to thank staff for their hard work. Looking back, I was tickled to death when we canceled the Elko meeting in lieu of Fallon, but now that the maps have been generated, it is unfortunate that the committee didn't get to make that ride and realize what 350 miles through Cardin looks like. Thank you. And again, thank you for your work. It was great.
And I apologize, Senator Gokachia. I got distracted. Do you mind? Do you have an additional question or no?
No, that was it. I was just thanking staff and making the comment that it's too bad we didn't make the run to Elko. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, any additional questions? All right. I believe Senator Gansert asked to be recognized.
Thank you, Chair. There's an exhibit that was included in the packet, so if everybody was to go to the exhibit that says SB1, SD15, current versus majority, Senator Severs Gansert, we had some conversations about compactness, and I think we may be able to get an index that talks about compactness, but when you open that map up, and I believe, just a second. I want to be able to have the visual here, but when you look at that map, it's part of the exhibit. What you can, the purple line basically outlines currently what Senate District 15 is, and it covers sort of the western half of Reno, which includes the communities of interest and political subdivision within the city of Reno, of Somerset, part of Verdi, and also Cold Springs. So the purple line on the western side, where it's close up between 14 and 15, is the current district, which is very compact and includes the political subdivision of Reno, and within that area that is now blue now, that's part of 14, are these subdivision, is Somerset, Verdi, and Cold Springs. And so when you talk about compactness, normally that area would be associated with District 15, but in the new one, it's not. And I just wanted to, when we talk about compactness, because we may have a ratio later, but I think you have to also be able to pass the visual test, the distance test. And if you were to look at Verdi, which is, can you put the current versus? Is that the current one? Is that the current at the top?
You know, and I think we could ask LCB staff if there's something you'd like to show in the meeting.
I just need the current one. So the point is when you look at compactness, you have to take into, and Haley knows which ones are which too, if it's the right one. I just want people to visually see that a portion of the city of Reno, the west side of Reno, has been carved out and added to 14, and 14 goes all the way to Carlin. And if you were to try to drive from Verdi, the most western part of the city of Reno and the western part of Nevada, and then you go all the way to Carlin, according to MapQuest, that is 278 miles. And if you were to go from Carlin to Salt Lake City, it's 252 miles. The point being, this is not a compact district. This is a district that's been severed. The city of Reno has been severed, and I think the visual really makes it much more clear than maybe some indexes that we'll look at that shows overall compactness of all the districts. So again, if you were to go from Verdi, the most western part of Reno, to Carlin, which is on the outside of 14 now, that's 278 miles versus Carlin to Salt Lake City is 252 miles. So we really have a piece of this political subdivision known as Reno that's been divided in these maps, and I think it's just really important to note that there is no compactness there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Senator Gansert. All right, not seeing any additional questions or comments from members. I would now like to go to support of Senate Bill 1, and I'd like to start in person here in Carson City in the committee room, and then I'll go to the telephones and to the Zoom. We are limiting 3 minutes per person, support, opposition, and neutral, and we plan on trying to cycle through support, I think trying to make sure that then we'll go to opposition, neutral, and trying to make sure that everyone gets heard. And I do want to clarify that if someone is generally supportive but has some changes they'd like to recommend, you can come and speak in support as well too, if anybody wants to, or call in on the phone or via Zoom. And again, thank you to Director Stewart, Ms. Steinle, and Ms. Prohl for that presentation. All right, I don't see anyone in the committee room. Go to broadcasting if there's anyone on the phone lines or on Zoom audio.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support of SB 1, please press star 9 now on your phone or raise hand in your Zoom window to take your place in the queue.
Is this for opposition? I'm sorry.
We are currently in support.
I am not in support, so I will waive my turn. I'm sorry about that.
And we are currently in support of SB 1. If you would like to testify in support, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue, or press raise hand in your Zoom window. Chair, you currently have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. I'd like to come back to the committee room, and I'll go to neutral. Anyone who is neutral on Senate Bill 1 who would like to be heard in person here in Carson City. And I would like to try to give that phone number out again if anyone wants to call in. The phone number to call in is area code 669-900-6833. Please enter meeting ID 839-9797-4355. This should also be on the legislative website, but I'd like to repeat it one more time. The phone number is area code 669-900-6833. Meeting ID 839-9797-4355. And then you hit the pound sign after entering the meeting ID. I'll read that meeting ID one more time per request of a member. 839-9797-4355, followed by the pound sign. And I appreciate everyone's patience. We want to make sure if anybody is having trouble logging in or calling in, that we give them ample time to participate. And while we're waiting for folks to call in, Director Stewart wanted to add one thing to the record. Director Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Michael Stewart. A question was asked about who referenced maps during our 4 public hearings in October, and I did miss a name. I apologize. It was Mr. Eli Trimble, testified in front of us as well, and he did reference some maps that he did submit on the My Districting application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Directors. That would be Mr. Trimble and Mr. Darby. Thank you. Broadcasting, I just wanted to check back and see if anyone has called in or if anyone's having any trouble calling in or logging in.
Thank you, Chair. You have had an increase in callers. Would you like me to ask for support again?
Yes, if you could, Broadcasting, that'd be great.
If you would like to testify in support of SB 1, please press star 9 now on your phone or raise hand in your Zoom window.
Okay, broadcasting, could we check on neutral? See if anyone's neutral on the measure and wants to be heard. And if not, we'll go to opposition. But I'll come up to the room here in Carson City first.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. 1 second. We have 2 callers that are in support. One caller is now unmuted. Please stand by.
Thank you. And again, I want to remind all callers, we are limiting testimony to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and proceed for the record.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Michael Kelly, North Las Vegas, Nevada, and I wanted to testify in support of this, in support of redistricting. What we were, as a veteran, these districts were drawn, and quite frankly, for the first time, veterans see an opportunity for better representation. The previous maps were not very supportive of veterans and did not give us an opportunity to as a special group to be heard and to be represented. These new maps allow us much greater representation, much greater support, and I testify in absolute support of this. And I hope that we as veterans will take advantage of this and continue to participate in the democratic process. And I want to thank the committee for the opportunities that have been made to allow veterans to testify and to offer input into this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly.
And we are currently in support of SB 1. If you have recently just joined us, if you would like to testify in support, please press star 9 now on your phone or raise hand in your Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 944, if you could please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
I am calling for neutral.
And that's
Thank
fine.
you.
The caller can go ahead and broadcasting if the caller would like to speak. But if not, we can just go ahead with...
Caller with the last 3 digits of 944, please continue.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the Joint Select Committee. My name is Ana Vitoro, representing Children's Advocacy Alliance. Anna, A-N-N-A, Vitoro, V-I-L-L-A-T-O-R-O. Children's Advocacy Alliance is an independent voice for Nevada's families and children. We are dedicated to advancing public policy in the areas of child safety, health, school readiness, and economic well-being. Children's Advocacy Alliance creates lasting change by tackling the biggest issues our kids and families face. As you are aware, children are included in the total population of each proposed legislative district. And although they cannot vote, they will be impacted by these district maps for the next 10 years. We have included a document highlighting the percentage of children in each proposed legislative district in Senate Bill 1. We ask you to consider how to prioritize the needs of children in each district in Nevada. We encourage you to reach out to community groups, families, parents, and children themselves to learn more. Even though children can't vote, they deserve a voice and champions at the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are currently in neutral testimony for SB 1. To testify neutral on SB 1, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. You may also press raise hand in your Zoom window. Caller with the last three digits of 069, we can see you're unmuted. Can you please continue?
Hi, this is Andre Wade. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Wade, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Good day, Chair Orenthal and members of the committee. My name is Andre Wade, ANDREWADE, and I work as State Director of Civil State Equality, a statewide LGBTQ plus civil rights organization here in Nevada. We're a member of the Nevada Count Coalition working on redistricting public education, which has been a difficult challenge for us, given the truncated process this time around. As we all know, any maps that are passed will be in effect for the next 10 years, so it's imperative that we ensure that these maps are reflective of our communities, regardless of political affiliation. As the state population grows, we know that diversity is growing, and it'd be great if we can see the diversity reflected in the elected officials. But more importantly, these elected officials should be able to keep the unique needs of our communities in mind through their representation. This isn't about partisan politics. This isn't about people. This is about people's voices being heard. But people's voices can't be heard if, we as a coalition can't have our maps uploaded without technical issues. Just imagine what it's like for the layperson trying to be engaged in the process and having technical issues. But overall, the lack of community input is a concern during the process, and just want to make sure that we're mindful of communities of interest. But thank you for your time and commitment to the passage of and drawing of fair and equitable maps. Thank you.
We are currently in neutral on SB1. If you would like to testify neutral, please press *9 now or raise hand in your Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Caller, please continue. You are now unmuted.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, committee. This is Quentin Savoy, Quentin, last name Savwoir. I'm the Deputy Director with Make It Work Nevada. We too are part of the Nevadans Count Coalition. I'm providing neutral testimony and gratitude to the Governor's Office for ensuring that those who are currently in the throes of the legal system and are incarcerated through NDOC will be aptly counted in the neighborhoods that they were where their last known address was indicated. We appreciate the progress towards making sure that we're preserving humanity and dignity, because folks should not be not counted in their communities because they've made a transgression. There's a whole lot more work that should be done in regards to these maps and ensuring that there's ample community input. But I do want to extend our thanks for ensuring that those who are in the criminal justice system will make sure they're counted where their last known address was. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Savoy.
If you recently just joined us, we are still currently taking neutral testimony on SB1. To testify neutral, please press *9 now or raise hand in your Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no more callers neutral at this time.
All right, thank you. I would like to now go to opposition. We'll come back here to the committee room in Carson City, and I want to remind anyone else who might want to speak in neutral or support, we will try to cycle back through those just so that anyone who might have missed the number or want to call in or had technical difficulties will be able to participate. So anyone who'd like to speak in opposition here in Carson City, please come forward, and we are limiting testimony to 3 minutes per speaker. And I'm actually going to pass the gavel on to my co-chair for a little while, and she's going to give me a break and conduct the meeting for a little bit, and we'll pass it back.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chair. And with that, again, just a reminder, 3 minutes per person, and please state and spell your name clearly for the record before you begin. We'll probably do, as Chair spoke, we will do a few minutes here, probably about 10, 15 minutes here in Carson City, then we'll move to the phones, and then we'll have another presentation from Mr. Stewart. So with that, whoever would like to go first, please begin.
Thank you, Chairwoman Miller, Chair Armanshall, and committee members. For the record, my name is Emily Prasad Zamora. That is PERSAUD-ZAMORA. I have to say that never did I actually imagine that I would be testing the negative on this particular issue that's really near and dear to my heart and to the many organizations and community members that we've been listening to for the last year. But here we are, because at the end of the day, we've got to put community first. Our diverse coalition has been working in the last year with many individuals, teaching them about the census, the importance of the census, why you need to fill it out, the impacts of it, and connecting it to this particular issue of redistricting. And what we've heard overwhelmingly from community members is that they're not happy about this process, and they're not happy about the end result of the maps, especially with congressional districts. Our diverse coalition of community members and Nevadans have drawn a map that ensures communities of interest are kept together and adequately represented, and does not mix in dramatically different income levels and populations with competing interests. These voices must be taken into consideration in the discussion had today here at the legislature, and when you cast your final vote. We do not represent or support any party's group, maybe contrary to popular belief, but I and none of our community partners are here for the Democratic Party or Republican Party. We're here for what's best for our community, and we know that these maps are separating a lot of our communities of interest. We're also troubled by the technical issues that we've encountered. My data team has worked over 24 hours trying to upload their maps onto the LCB website, and it's not taking it. We've called. We don't get any good solid advice as to what to do except call LCB. And so we will print them out and provide them as an exhibit for legislators to see. Nevada is the third most diverse state in the nation, and it's imperative that our voices representing these communities of interest are empowered within the process, and that our elected officials take their feedback and concerns seriously. The outcome of this special session will determine Nevada's voting districts for the next decade, making this a can't-miss opportunity to ensure that all elected officials, especially those representing the after-more communities, understanding and answering to the needs of our communities. Our second graders are going to be voting in these districts, and we have a responsibility to them to ensure that we're hearing their voices today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paula Luna, P-A-U-L-A-L-U-N-A, and I'm testifying as a constituent living in Congressional District 1. I'm in opposition of SB 1. I'm a Latina and I live in a largely Latinx area. I am concerned that the proposed map for CD1 will divide and, as a result, diminish my community's ability to engage in their government. We are a community of interest, a shared interest, and we deserve a seat at the table on this issue. We share bilingual and bicultural characteristics. We have children that attend the same schools. Many of us are employed in the same work sectors, and the community even has culturally and linguistically appropriate nonprofit organizations. It is important that this body ensures that all communities of interest are taken into consideration, that the redistricting process and that our input is actively taken into account and taken seriously. We need to ensure that our needs are understood and we are fairly represented. The proposed redrawing of District 1 would break up the Latinx community in my area, and I do not want to see that. This is a nonpartisan issue about a community of people who should be listened to and who have concerns. I want to see my community together as we have been, guaranteeing our voice will not be drowned out and that our needs will not be ignored. Please take a look and consider the map proposed by Nevadans Count that was actually drawn with the input from our community, if they're able to ever get it uploaded. Please vote on SB 1 and go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak and provide my members' perspective and input. My name is Vincent Guthrow, spelled V-I-N-S-O-N. Last name is spelled Gutreau, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Nevada Association of Counties, or NACO. We represent Nevada's counties, and we have a keen interest in the reapportionment and redistricting process that you all are undertaking. Our counties have addressed their own redistricting in their respective communities, so we are aware of the work that has been done and the difficult considerations that have to be made. Our member counties do have concerns with the proposed maps due to the splitting of multiple rural counties. Under this proposal, there would be additional counties that will house multiple Assembly and Senate districts. I'll submit some of my testimony for writing. I don't think I need to go into the examples as they've already been discussed at length, but we do believe this creates a dilution of representation and increases the burden on our local elections officials. NACO provided comments to the Interim Committee and to keep counties whole to the extent possible. And our members, like this legislative body, recognize the growth in both population and diversity of this state, and we value our state and county partnership, which is why we suggested that to the extent possible that county lines be kept whole. We thank you for the opportunity to provide input on this important matter, and I want to thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, committee. My name is Taylor Patterson. For the record, TaylorPatterson. I am the Executive Director of Native Voters Alliance Nevada and a member of the Bishop Paiute Tribe. I'm here today to encourage the committee to listen to the feedback of BIPOC organizers. As noted, we have seen many tribal communities split in a multitude of ways. While some of these issues have been fixed, others have not. Reno Sparks Indian Colony is still being divided, as well as Walker River Paiute Tribe is still being divided into multiple congressional districts. Some of these issues come down to the fact that we cannot always rely on the mapping systems to have correct boundaries of reservation lands. All of this could have been avoided by doing appropriate tribal consultation. Unfortunately, it is nearly impossible for communities to give their feedback on these maps. The software currently used by the legislature is slow, antiquated, and difficult to use. If the computer system is not an issue, internet access is. Much of our rural tribal communities do not have reliable internet access. If community members cannot create maps and submit feedback, this process will not be successful. Our communities have to live with these maps for the next 10 years. We need to get this right the first time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Saunders, and I'm the Policy Director with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada and a member of the Nevadans Count Coalition. Redistricting only happens every 10 years, shaping the future for how our communities are represented for the time to come. The 2020 census data showed how the U.S. population has changed over the last decade and that Black, Indigenous, AAPI, and Latinx populations drove that change. This was especially true for Nevada, as we are now the third most diverse state in the nation. We cannot ignore the fact how much our state grew over the past decade and how much more diverse it is now. To do so, we run the risk of losing community voices at a time when it is most crucial to increase them. Therefore, we must get this right and ensure that Nevadans are equitably represented and able to elect representatives of their choice. I want to echo the sentiments of my Southern Nevada colleagues that the Latinx vote must not be overly divided and that low-end communities should not be diluted so they are fairly represented. As for the northern part of the state, there are a few minor changes that we believe will benefit the community. First, as drawn in the Senate and Assembly maps introduced, Sun Valley has been split. Other jurisdictions in northern Nevada have worked to make this community whole, and we believe that the legislature should too. In addition, the boundary at UNR should be moved further to the west to Washington to ensure that all of the student housing and students who live nearby are included in the campus. We hope that you take this feedback from all of the communities of interest today and make these changes on the maps before moving them forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Benjamin Challoner, Policy Director with Faith in Action Nevada. Our organization is also a member of the Nevadans Count Coalition. I'm here representing faith leaders, community leaders, and people of goodwill. Once these maps are approved, they're set for 10 years. These maps set who represents an elected office, our communities. It's important that those who represent these communities look like the community and understand their unique needs. But the lasting efforts are not limited to 10 years. The policies that are implemented by the elected officials during these years will have effects on generations to come. which is why it's extremely important to make sure that districts truly represent our communities and the districts keep our communities whole. I'd like to echo the sentiments from our previous Nevadans Count Coalition members, especially the ones about Northern Nevada. Sun Valley is currently split in 3 districts, as you just heard, area around the university. And there's one other area I do want to bring up, the Neal Road area, that is currently being split into 2 different districts. I would like to see that whole as one. Previously, as they currently are, it's being split into 3 assembly districts. We're really close to having it be in one single district, so I would like to see that happen too. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can remind everyone to also spell their name for the record. Thank you for that. And next speaker, please proceed.
For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, ANNETTE-MAGNUS, and I am the Executive Director of Battle Worn Progress in opposition to SB 1. We sadly stand in opposition to this measure for a few reasons. One is the division of communities of interest and putting competing income levels, municipalities, and interests together in some of these maps, which would create layers of issues. Second, and this is an issue I will focus on, the technical difficulties the Nevadans Count Coalition and my personal staff who do tech work for a living have experienced over the last 24 hours in uploading our map, which addresses the issues of communities of interest and income levels from our perspective. The technology infrastructure that is being used to process public input is not configured properly to accept complex maps. The server tasked with the processing of the shapefiles required simply does not have enough memory allocated to process more complex geometries. We would be happy to provide images of those hidden error messages in order to help solve this issue. Worse yet, the program simply stops working in the background, giving the Nevadans trying to use their voice no indication of what the problem is or if their map has even actually been uploaded properly. We now have no idea how many maps have not been uploaded successfully. This is not user error, this is a systems failure. One that could have been solved in hours or minutes, not days or months. One that should have been fixed in the time between it being reported, which was as soon as it happened yesterday, and now. One that should have never happened in the first place if you actually wanted the public to be involved in this process. The real question here is how many Nevadans were prevented from having their voices heard because of this error? I feel like a broken record every time I come to this building, and I'm tired of it. Every time this comes down to process, you need to actually listen to and involve the Nevadans you work for, the constituents who elect you. This should be a nonpartisan process. This is not a time for partisan bickering. Our arguments are not about one party over the other. Contrary to popular belief, we do not work for any party. We side with reality and the community in this. Our arguments are about listening to the communities you should be serving over special interests. You can have as many public meetings as you want, but if you have them just to check a box and do not take communities' comments into consideration, it doesn't actually mean anything. I've said this repeatedly during this redistricting process. This needs to be transparent and accessible to real people.
And if you have any additional comments, you may submit them for the record. Next speaker.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair and Chair. I'm Dr. Robin Titus, a citizen of Smith Valley, and that's who I represent, although I am Assemblywoman from District 38. I'm not at this table to comment on the Senate or the Assembly maps. We have seen plenty of comments on those today. I am here at the table as somebody, as a community of interest in Smith Valley, whose a member of my family has continuously lived in Smith Valley since 1888. And I bring with me to the table, and I would ask that you turn to your congressional maps, the proposed Democrat congressional maps that you have been given. And on there, I would ask you if you could even see that little piece of pink that has been removed from that, which is my little portion of, it's not just Smith Valley been removed, It's just one side of the street where I live, separated from the rest of Smith Valley, the tractor dealer, the little bar of my community, the houses on the other side. So I had to blow that up to get the emphasis, to emphasize how ridiculous that particular chunk was drawn out from Smith Valley. Many have heard me complain about the CD4 division in the past 10 years ago, where we felt we weren't really represented, where we were cut from Wabusca, which is a geographic line of a railroad, and all of Mason Valley and Smith Valley were moved down to CD4. We have lived with that for the last 10 years. I will say my representative from CD4 has not been in my community of Smith Valley. So when these maps were redrawn, we were hoping that we were either going to be all moved up to CD2 or left where we were, so at least we had a couple valleys where we were together. This new map is absolutely, we were all shocked when we saw this new map. Where this line was drawn, I won't say they did it deliberately to remove my house and leave me in CD4 and give everybody else to CD2, but it's incredible how anybody who did this map, and nobody here is taking any ownership of it because somebody was hired to do it and nobody can ask that person questions, how was that drawn out? So I will submit to this committee that at least in this congressional map, that particular drawing is as egregious as anything I've ever seen to remove and split a community of interest. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And with that, we're exactly at 15 minutes for opposition here in Carson City. So I would like to move to the phone lines for the next 15 minutes. So broadcasting, if you can open the lines for anyone calling in opposition.
Yes, thank you. We are currently on opposition of SB1. If you would like to testify in opposition, please press *9 now or raise hand in your Zoom window to take your place in the queue. You will then be prompted to unmute when it is your turn to speak.
Hello, this is Eli Trimble, the same Eli Trimble that submitted the proposed maps and spoke to the interim community. My name is spelled ELITRIMBLE. During that interim meeting, I specifically pointed out SB 14 as being a problem child. It's currently the district in which I reside in. And it's atrocious that, you know, the district stretches for more than 200 miles. And lo and behold, SC 14 once again stretches for 200 miles the other way now. So I really cannot support these maps. They kind of continue the theme we've been seeing of urban and suburban areas being coupled with rural areas. Completely unnecessarily. You know, and as I look at these county splits, especially in the rural counties, there is no reason to have this many rural counties split. I once again, you know, ask the legislature to please review my, you know, submitted state Senate and state Assembly plans, plans 277 and 267. Overall, I think there are some good aspects to these plans. I think as far as the congressional maps are concerned, it is disappointing to see that not one congressional district was Hispanic majority. It is very possible to draw a Hispanic majority district, and it kind of boggles my mind that the legislature is choosing not to do so. With that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, just want to remind everyone to please spell your name after you state your first and last name. Please make sure to spell it so that we can have that specifically on the record. Broadcasting, do we have other callers?
Yes, Chair, you do. We're just going through one at a time. It takes a second as we ask each one to unmute. Please stand by. Caller with the last 3 digits of 153, please press *6 now to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Assembly and Senate. I'm Alondra Flores, ALONDRAFLORES, and I'm calling as a constituent to oppose the proposed maps. We need maps that keep our community together and can give us representation that understands our needs. I'm asking you to consider new maps that truly represent Latino. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Good morning, Assembly and Senate. My name is Eduardo Alvarez, EDUARDO, Alvarez, ALVAREZ, and I oppose the current maps. Latinos deserve better representation, and these maps do the exact opposite.
Sir, are you still there? Was that the end of your testimony?
I'm sorry. Please keep the TV off. I'm getting ready to go on now.
Sir, are you still continuing your testimony?
Come on, you got mine. This is yours over here. Oh, you put mine over there?
Hello, caller?
Oh, never mind. Mine's in the microwave. Never mind.
Caller?
Hello?
Hi, do you know that you're on with the legislature right now?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Are you wishing to testify in opposition?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you start with...
Yes, I am.
Okay, so why don't you start with your first and last name, and please spell it for the record, and then you will have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Yvette Williams, YVETTE, last name WILLIAMS. I am speaking, I'm sharing my public comment as a resident of Section 11 in beautiful Spring Valley Township. My comments do not reflect the opinion of the Spring Valley Town Board, and I'm not speaking in my role as chair of this advisory board, but entirely as a resident and private citizen. I live in Section 11, adjoining to Section 10 in Spring Valley Township, an unincorporated community of Clark County and an official township. Both our neighborhoods enjoy a very strong sense of community. We often work, play, and support each other on issues impacting both our rural neighborhood preservation community. We were shocked and dismayed by the proposed plan to shave off the very small tip of the most northern community of Spring Valley Township and move it to a proposed district that represents almost entirely communities in the cities of Las Vegas and North Las Vegas, where local government and local issues are very much different than ours in unincorporated Clark County, and in particular, our rural neighborhood preservation committee. We only have a Clark County commissioner to hear our concerns. We do not have a city council. Our community of interest is requesting that instead of literally splitting our beloved neighborhoods right down the middle at Palmyra Street in both Section 10 and 11, that you move the proposed District 9 north to Sahara Boulevard. This is approximately 5 streets north. That's it. This will preserve our neighborhoods intact with our township and our community of interest. The other option is to keep Section 10 and 11 and District 8 Senate and District 5 Assembly, where we are currently with other communities of interest in Spring Valley, moving the proposed boundary east to Jones along Sahara Boulevard. Please do not isolate us from our township. Our polling location is currently at Gray Elementary, and we often use this location to meet up and discuss concerns on Election Day, and also at the adjacent Davis Park. We are a tight-knit community, and the thought of splitting us down the middle at Palmyra Street is heartbreaking and creates division. When we meet with our representatives, which we often do, it is nice that our entire community can reach out to one representative for the Senate and one representative for the Assembly. We work with elected officials, and in the spirit of unity and community interest, please keep us intact with our township. Thank you for your consideration and service to Nevada. And I also
And
want
with
to mention,
that was
as
3
chair
minutes.
of the Clark
Speaker,
County,
your 3 minutes are up.
3 minutes. Okay,
Yes,
I'll call back in.
If
Thank
you have additional comments, please submit them in writing. Next caller. I also, while we're waiting for the next caller, I wanted to announce that we do have an interpreter here in the room that can translate from Spanish to English in case we have any Spanish-speaking Nevadans that are interested in testifying, whether here in the room or on the phone. So Ms. Sanchez is available if we need that service, okay? And with that, broadcasting, please bring the next caller in. We're going to do a few more calls. We have about 5-6 more minutes on the phone, and then we'll come back down here to testimony in the room for another 15 minutes, and then we'll just keep going 15 minutes back and forth until we get everyone through.
Good afternoon, Assembly and Senate. My name is Claudia Morales, CLAUDIA MORALES, and I am opposed to the proposed maps. Latinos contribute so much to Nevada, and we are not appreciated and respected. The Latino community has suffered so much in the last few years with immigration and COVID, and now you are trying to take away our community. Please draw maps that will represent Latinos. We will hold you accountable for this during the 2022 midterm election. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. And also, while we're waiting to broadcasting, is there a way for you to identify or to ask for specific prompts of anyone that is Spanish speaking and requesting translation services?
Yes, I can absolutely do that for you. Would you like me to do that now?
Yes, please. And also cue the next caller.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits of 066, please proceed.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Miller, Chair Orenshall, and committee members. My name is Guillermo Barahona, spelled GUILLERMOBARAHONA, and I am the Civic Engagement Director for Chispa, Nevada, and we are partners with the Nevada's Count Coalition, and we are in strong opposition to SB1. From the school board to the Interim Redistricting Committee, county commissioners, and city council meetings, community members have been urging our elected officials to put communities of interest first. That means having meaningful public input. To put it into perspective, it means providing community members with an ample amount of time to look at the proposed maps, allowing them to provide their feedback and actually incorporating their feedback. That also means the platform where this body is asking everyday Nevadans to post their proposed maps must be accessible. However, if Nevadans Count cannot post our proposed maps due to technical difficulties, how can we expect everyday Nevadans to do so? Also, I noticed that it seems that the Add a Comments feature of the maps has disappeared from the website itself. Redistricting happens once every 10 years. The decisions this body will make will drastically affect our communities, and it's important to incorporate their feedback. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Broadcasting, have you identified any callers that we need to have translation services with?
I am currently working on that, Chair.
Okay.
If we could, would you like me to go ahead and skip to the next caller?
Yes, let's do one more call. That will be our 15 minutes on the phone, and then we will bounce down to back here in the room, so that then you'll have an opportunity for more time as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Doug Busselman. Doug is D-O-U-G. Busselman is B-U-S-S-E-L-M-A-N. I'm calling this afternoon as a private citizen in opposition to the maps. Yesterday, I did file comments to the maps, taking exception to the way that 3 rural counties were split up where they could have followed county lines to be more appropriate. I would urge that that would be done going forward. Also, I was concerned about the way in which Pahrump has been divided into different districts. This afternoon, I didn't find where the posted information was for this meeting. I looked in exhibits for the committee, was not able to find it. And so I'm not sure where we are in terms of what maps we're actually working with at this point. Also, my experience in trying to work with my district system was not very helpful. I wasn't able to ever find my way to get into the system in order to do more than what I did yesterday in filing comments. So I would hope that changes could be made and that citizens might be able to have a more easily accessed information on where we are with the map so that we're able to comment on current considerations that you all are working with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. And with that, we will come down and begin another 15 minutes in the room here. So with that, whoever would like to go first, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Assemblyman John Ellison, District 33. I'm here today in opposition of the maps as presented. There is alternate maps out there that should have been considered or discussed. That's not happening as we speak right now. As you guys know, right now we've got 2 districts right now in just Elko County alone that'll be split in 2. And I've got a colleague here, Mr. Hornshaw, that you know the challenges we have in rural Nevada. And I'll give you an example of some of the challenges we do have. Midas, I got to go all the way through Winnemucca to get back through to that little town. Tuscarora, same thing. And these are dirt roads. I got to go up to, going to Wild Horse to get into Tuscarora. Jarbridge, and that's massive. You either go up the Idaho border or you go up through Charleston. And then you've got the rural counties like Jackpot, Windover, Carlin, Ely. And these people are calling in right now trying to get a hold of this phone board right now that they can't get through. I'll give you an example. I got 3 county commissioners trying to call in right now in strong opposition to split of the counties in northern Nevada. And that is Chairman John Carr, Rex Steniger, Vice Chair, and then Cliff Eklund. And that's just a few that are trying to call in that can't get through. So I ask you to reconsider some of the boundaries that are in here. And then the alternate map should have been considered. It would have moved some of the areas from Esmeralda into Nye County. But to travel these distances, I don't know how my senator in District 19 has made all these trips, all these years down to there. And I don't know how many thousands and thousands of miles he puts on his vehicle a year, but it's pretty rough, and my district's rough. So I'd ask you to please not accept the maps as presented, and I thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, and all the members of this joint committee. I'm P.K. O'Neill, Assemblyman for Assembly District 40, which includes all of Carson City and southeast part of Washoe County. I wasn't initially planning on speaking today, but I was listening to the discussion, and several times I heard a statement similar to, I can't quite tell from the map, and then they went on to describe an issue that they had with these shape maps. In reviewing the current NRS of 218B, it specifies and specifically speaking of Section 795, which describes the constraints of Assembly District 40, my district, I went and looked at it, and it gives specific definitions of what Assembly District 40 is. I can read it. I'll read it back to you if you so desire, but you know what AD 40 is. Versus, allow me to show you AD 40 today. Would you please give me the descriptions, particularly in the northern parts, of what roads and boundaries are included or define AD 40? I gotta say, respectfully, as respectful as I can to this body, we are dumbing down NRS. We are making NRS a comic book of pictures. No longer are our state statutes, the Nevada revised statutes, words. They are pictures. I think back to just last session when I had a bill that was describing some warnings, and I had to give in the bill not a picture of what the warning signs would be, but described by font and size, inches in centimeters and in inches, what those warnings would be. Now, for redistricting, which we will live by for the next 10 years, we will describe with pictures. I think that's an insult to the state of Nevada, to its citizens, and to the districts themselves. I thank you for the time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the room wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 1?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. My name is Jill Dickman. I'm the Assemblywoman representing District 31. And the minority party has an amendment that I believe that staff would like to present. Would that be?
Okay, and so with that, we're going to have Mr. Stewart from LCB present. And just so that everyone understands, Mr. Stewart, as a representative of the Legislative Council Bureau, will not be limited to 3 minutes. However, anyone else would be limited to 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, Mr. Stewart, whenever you and the team are ready, please proceed. I know it will take a minute or so. And I just want to state for everyone watching and listening that we are still in opposition. LCB will be presenting the maps in opposition.
Good afternoon, committee members. Again, for the record, Michael Stewart with the Research Division of the Legislative Council Bureau. As noted, and I'm joined, as I noted previously, with by Haley Prohl, Senior Policy Analyst and GIS Specialist with the Research Division, and Kathy Steinley, GIS Specialist with the LCB's Information Technology Services Unit. So we've been asked today to provide, again, factual information regarding reapportionment and redistricting plans that are proposed that you have in front of me from the joint minority as part of their requested amendment to SB 1 of the 33rd special session. And again, I must once again provide the disclosure that as central nonpartisan staff, we cannot advocate for the passage or defeat of any legislation, or in this case, any reapportionment or redistricting proposal or any amendments thereto. We are here today as requested to present only basic factual information found in the redistricting proposal before you for the committee's review as requested in this amendment. The proposal sets forth redistricting plans for the House of Representatives, as you know, the State Senate, and the State Assembly.
And as I mentioned earlier, we won't be able to answer any questions relating to the rationale of why a district boundary may or may not have been drawn one way or the other, as these were decisions that were made by the authors of the proposed plan. And again, we'll cycle through with each plan like we did before, start with an explanation of the geography and the overall features of that. Ms. Steinle will follow with an overview of district population and relevant deviation for ideal population and other statistical data, and I will highlight certain issues and topics regarding race and ethnic minority concentrations. You should have before you copies of these associated maps and tables, and again for the public and those following over the internet, all of this information has been uploaded onto the Nellis system. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Haley to kick it off on the geography of the Congressional plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Haley Prohl, Senior Policy Analyst, GIS Specialist with LCB for the record. As was stated before, Nevada has 4 congressional seats. So starting with the Congressional plan, the proposed amendment establishes 4 distinct geographical districts. District 2 is in northern Nevada. District 4 contains central Nevada and parts of Clark County surrounding the Las Vegas Valley, including Henderson and Boulder City. Districts 1 and 3 are wholly contained within Clark County. District 3 contains western parts of the Las Vegas core and extends down to the southern tip of the state. And District 1 contains some of the Las Vegas core and North Las Vegas and extends north into more rural parts of Clark County. Except for Clark County, Churchill and Lyon counties are the only counties divided in the Congressional plan, and that is on the District 2 and 4 border. And that concludes the geographical component. I will now pass it to Kathy, who will cover some population figures.
Thank you. For the record, Kathy Steinle, ITS, Legislative Council Bureau. For the Congressional plan, the 4 congressional districts have nearly even population. 776,153 for Districts 1 and 2. 776,154 for Districts 3 and 4. And again, I'll review how we come up with the optimal population. The ideal population is calculated by dividing the number of districts into the total state population. Thus, 3,104,614 divided by 4 is 776,153.5. Therefore, due to rounding, the deviation numbers are actually minus 0.5 for Districts 1 and 2 and positive 0.5 for Districts 3 and 4. By adding the largest positive deviation to the largest negative deviation, the result is an overall range of deviation of 1, which is 0.0.
And again, Michael Stewart for the record. Turning to the racial data report on the second page of your tables for the Congressional proposed amendment, I'll just highlight the top percentage categories in each of those. For white alone, census reported District 2, Congressional District 2, with 67.65%. Black or African American, including Black or African American with another race, the high district there is District 1 with 21.12%. The high district for American Indian and Alaska Native is District 2 with 4.90%. Asian, including Asian with other races, the high district is District 3 with 20.11%. For Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, the high district is District 3 with 2.45%. Some other race, the high district is District 1 with 26.56%. And 2 or more races, again, broad dispersion here, but the high district there is District number 1 with 16.85%. And then finally, the high district for Hispanic or Latino of any race is District 1 with 47.64%. And I'll turn it back over to Haley to review the Senate proposal.
Again, Haley Pearl for the record. The proposed amendment establishes 21 Senate districts for the Senate plan, 15 of which are wholly within Clark County, 5 of which are in western Nevada, including 2 wholly within Washoe County, and 1 of which includes the eastern part of the state and parts of Clark County. In addition to Clark and Washoe counties, 4 counties are divided among Senate districts in the plan, and those counties that are divided are Churchill, Lyon, Nye, and Story. And all assembly districts are nested within Senate districts for this proposed amendment, meaning that one Senate district wholly contains 2 assembly districts, and those pairings can be found in those tables as well. And I'll turn it over to Kathy for the population numbers for the Senate plan.
Thank you. Kathy Steinle, ITS with Legislative Council Bureau. The ideal population for a 21-district Senate plan is 147,839. In this plan, the largest positive deviation is in District 16 and is 561. Which is 0.38%. The largest negative deviation is in District 17 and is minus 829, which is minus 0.56%. Therefore, the overall range of deviation is 1,390, which is 0.94%.
Thank you again, Michael Stewart, for the record. Then looking at the racial data report for the Senate proposed amendment. The high districts for each category for white alone is districts 15, 16, 17, and 19. And those range from 68.73% to 77.40%. The high districts for Black or African American, including Black or African American with another race, are districts 1, 4, 10, with a range of 17.82 to 28.49. For American Indian and Alaska Native, the high districts for that are districts 13, 14, 17, and 19, ranging from 4.38% to 6.43%. For Asian, including Asian with other race, the high districts are 8, 9, 11, and 20, ranging from 18.51 to 28.02. And for Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, the high districts are number 5, 9, 11, and 20, ranging from 2.39% to 2.79%. Some other race alone, those high districts are 2, 3, 4, 10, and 21, ranging from 21.21% to 39.09%. For 2 or more races, kind of broad disbursement again on that, with ranging from a low of in District 17 of 10.68% to a high in District 2 of 17.39%. And then finally, Hispanic or Latino, the high districts there are 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, and 21, with a range of 35.99% to a high of 63.45%. And that covers the Senate statistics for that one. I'll turn it back over to Haley. Thank you.
Again, Haley Pearl for the record. So for the Assembly plan, the amendment would establish 42 districts, 30 of which are wholly within Clark County. One district, number 36, is mostly Clark County, but also extends into Nye County as well. There are 10 districts generally in the west, 6 of which are completely within Washoe County. And then District 33 contains the eastern part of the state and extends from Elko County down to Lincoln County. In addition to Clark and Washoe counties, the Other counties that are split among assembly districts include Churchill, Lyon, Nye, and Story. And again, these assembly districts nest into the sister Senate plan with this plan. And I'll turn it back over to Kathy.
Thank you. Kathy Steinle, Legislative Council Bureau. The ideal population for a 42-district assembly plan is 73,919. In this plan, the largest positive deviation is in District 40 and is 368, which is 0.50%. The largest negative deviation is in District 38 and is minus 415, which is 0.56%. Therefore, the overall range of deviation is 783, which is 1.06%.
And then turning to the racial data report on page 2 of your tables, the high percentage districts in the proposed amendment for white alone are districts 23, 25, 26, 28, 32, 33, 38, 39, and 40. And those range from 70.76 to 80.25%. The high districts for Black or African American are districts 1, 6, 7, 16, and 17, ranging from 21.96 to 30%. For American Indian and Alaska Native, the high districts are 32, 33, 38, and 40, ranging from 4.84% to 8.90%. For Asian and Asian with other race, the high districts are numbers 5, 8, 9, 35, 41, and 42, with a range of 20.15% to 34.9%. For Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, the high districts are district number 1, 35, and 41, with a range of 2.50 to 3.98%. Some other race alone, the high districts there are 3, 6, 7, 10, 11, 14, 15, and 28, with a range from 25.18% to 41.24%. 2 or more races, districts range from in District 39 of 9.96% to District 18 at 17.52%. And then finally, Hispanic or Latino, those high districts are 3, 6, 7, 11, 14, 15, and 28, in a range of 45.62 to 66.14. And that covers the racial data information for the Assembly. I think that kind of covers our presentation on that. I'm happy to help with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, we're not having questions because this is in opposition testimony, but thank you so much. So with that, I'm actually going to return back to the phones because I know people have been waiting for quite a while on the phones, and we're actually a few minutes over the time anticipated to return to the phones. So broadcasting, if we can go back to the phones, and then we will return to anyone still here present in the room that would like to make opposition testimony.
Thank you, Chair. This is broadcast. Do we happen to have a translator on a microphone?
I can bring her up to the desk. In fact, she's approaching right now.
Thank you. If we could do that, I could have her repeat after me to make the announcement.
Okay. And do we have a few individuals that will need services, assistance? Or I should say,
I believe
Ms.
we
Sanchez?
do, but I'm not sure because I can't announce it in Spanish.
Okay. So here, you may speak directly to Ms. Sanchez, and then if it's possible, maybe, because I know Ms. Sanchez is here just for a limited time, if we could have all of our individuals that you will be translating for broadcasting, if you could put them all together so we could just make sure that we're able to provide translation while Ms. Sanchez is here. Are you capable of doing that once she announces?
Yes, Chair. I'm going to make an announcement first to the callers in English, then I'm going to lower all their hands, and then we can go from there.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sanchez, just please proceed as necessary.
Callers that are on the line, I'm going to lower all of your hands so that we can make a Spanish-speaking announcement for those that need translation. Then after that, we can continue your test. Please stand by. Now, if the translator could repeat after me, to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on bill number SB1, please press raise hand in your Zoom window or *9 on your phone.
Ms. Sanchez, please repeat that in Spanish.
Okay, can you repeat that one more time? I'm so sorry.
Broadcasting, can you repeat?
Testify in support. Yes, I can.
Testifiando.
To testify in support, opposition, or neutral on SB1, please press *9 now on your phone or raise hand in your Zoom window.
Si estás testificando en el AB9. I'm sorry, what was that? SB1.
SB1.
Por favor, oprime el número 1 en su teléfono o levante su mano.
Can we please have you announce that one more time?
Si está testificando en el ASB1, por favor, levante su mano o oprime el número 1 en su teléfono.
I do not need translation. Do you still want me to be testifying?
Actually, we are reserving these few moments. It should be *9, not *1. Okay. Actually, we're reserving this for individuals who we will translate it first because we only have Ms. Sanchez for a limited time. So if you could please just hold the line and we will come back to you. And Ms. Sanchez, could you repeat the number again? It's actually #9. *9.
*9. Si está testificando, por favor, oprime las teclas número 9 en su teléfono o levante su mano.
Chair, everyone has just lowered their hands. I hate to ask this, but can we please do it one final time just to make sure?
Todos los que están testificando, por favor, oprime la tecla número 9 para ASB.
Thank you. We now have 3 callers in the queue.
Okay, so Ms. Sanchez, it may be better, so because I know you won't remember 3 minutes, so maybe if you could ask each speaker first to, again, let them know, and, a few phrases or sentences at a time.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I start now?
Ms. Sanchez, if you could announce the caller to press *6 to unmute themselves.
Si por favor el primer llamador puede oprimir el número 6 para poder oír la llamada.
It starts.
Tecle 6. Tiene que oprimir la estrella y el número 6 para poder oír la llamada. ¿Está ahí llamador?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Luz.
Buenas tardes, Luz.
¿Soy líder comunitario?
¿Habla Erika Sánchez?
Sí, soy Luz.
Sí, buenas tardes, Luz.
Buenas tardes.
Le voy a pedir que diga pocas palabras una vez para yo poder traducir su llamada.
Sí. Soy líder comunitaria y represento muchos latinos que siempre han trabajado por mejorar nuestra comunidad.
Her name is Luz. She's representing lots of Latinos that have worked for for lots of, como me dijo, mucho tiempo, for lots of time. Okay, ¿puede continuar?
Sí, que siempre han trabajado por mejorar
That have always worked to better themselves. Por favor.
nuestra comunidad
For the community.
y ayudar
And to help.
a que candidatos
¿Puede repetir, por favor? To come out ahead.
nos representen.
For our representatives to be represent us properly.
Por eso estoy llamando hoy
That's why she is calling today.
los mapas que han propuesto
The maps that have been proposed
no presentan latinos.
do not represent Latinos.
¿Y quiénes somos?
Perdón?
¿Y quiénes somos?
¿Y tienen tomos?
Ni quiénes somos.
I'm not sure I'm understanding her.
If we could have it quiet in the room, please.
And nor who we are.
Thank you. It does not represent Latinos and who we are.
¿Puede continuar?
Ni nuestras contribuciones.
Not even our contributions.
Le pedimos que no apoyen
We ask that you do not support
mapas
maps,
que le quitan voz
that they take away the voice
a nuestra comunidad latina.
of our Latin community.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Broadcasting, can we have the next caller, please?
Yes, Chair. If you can announce it, please press *6 to unmute yourself one more time.
¿Puede oprimir la estrella 6 para poder oír la llamada? Está en el teléfono, tiene que oprimir la estrella y el número 6 para poder oír la llamada.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Yo me llamo Erika Sánchez y le voy a pedir que me diga pocas palabras para yo poder repetir lo que está diciendo para no perder lo que me está diciendo.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Carlos Vélez.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Reese.
Y no estoy de acuerdo con los mapas propuestos.
And I am not in the court, and I'm not, what's the word? Yes, I'm not in agreement with the maps.
Ok, respeten nuestra comunidad.
Please respect our community.
Queremos un distrito con mayoría de latinos.
We want a district
Gracias.
with the majority of Latinos. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Our next caller, please.
El próximo llamador puede oprimir el número 6, estrella 6, para poder oír su llamada, por favor.
There we go. They just remuted themselves and now they're unmuted.
Buenas tardes.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Mi nombre es Reina Belis.
Perdón, ¿puede repetir?
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Reina Belis.
Good afternoon. My name is Reina Reese.
Soy líder comunitaria.
Le voy a pedir que diga unas pocas palabras a un tiempo para yo poder decirlo en inglés, por favor, Reina. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon.
Muchas. Soy líder comunitaria.
Sí.
Y estoy llamando.
Reina's calling in.
Porque no estoy de acuerdo con los mapas propuestos.
Because she's not also in agreement with the maps.
Por favor.
Please.
Respeten nuestra voz.
Respect our
y
voices.
el territorio donde los latinos.
Repita, por favor. Please respect our voice and our Latin.
Donde los latinos celebramos quiénes somos.
¿Puede repetir, por favor? No la puedo oír muy bien. Se está cortando un poquito la llamada.
Donde respeten nuestra voz.
Respect our
El
voices.
territorio.
Where the Latins.
Donde los latinos celebramos.
I'm not sure I understand what she's saying.
Por favor, respeten nuestra voz.
Please respect our voice.
Territorio donde los latinos celebramos.
Where the
¿Quiénes
Latins.
somos?
¿Puede repetir, por favor, una vez más? Nomás la última parte, por favor.
Donde los latinos celebramos quiénes somos.
No lo oigo. I don't understand what she's saying. Just the last portion of it. I'm not sure what.
Donde los latinos celebramos quiénes somos.
Where the Latins celebrate who they are. Celebrate who they are.
Okay, thank you.
Donde nos sentimos seguros.
Where they feel secure.
Y trabajamos.
And they work.
Por una comunidad con representación.
For a community with representation.
No a los mapas que nos separan.
Not the maps that separate us.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Broadcasting, do we have any other individuals that we will be translating for?
I believe we have one last caller for Spanish translation, Chair.
Okay. And Ms. Sanchez, can we remind everyone to state their name and to spell it for the record, please?
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Llamador, ¿puede oprimir la estrella número 6 para poder oír su llamada?
¿Aló?
Sí, buenas tardes. ¿Puede decir su nombre, por favor?
Mi nombre es Isabel Klein.
¿Sí lo puede letrar, por favor?
Mi nombre es Isabel Klein y estoy llamando yo soy una madre latina que ha criado a sus hijos en el condado de Clark.
Isabel.
Y estoy mirando.
Isabel, ¿me puede decir unas palabras poquito a un tiempo para poder repetir lo que está diciendo, por favor?
Okay, estoy llamando como.
My name is Isabel Klein, and I am calling as a single Latin mother.
Y yo he criado a mis hijos en el condado de Clark.
And I have raised my children alone in the Clark County.
Y estoy mirando que estos mapas nos afectarán a mi familia e hijos.
And I am looking at these maps that will affect my family.
y otras familias que votarán en estos distritos durante los próximos 10 años.
and the rest of the families that will be voting in the future for these same maps.
Pido que los mapas finales permitan a los latinos de Nevada elegir funcionarios que puedan ayudarme a mí y a mi familia.
Sí puede repetir eso, pero nomás unas palabras al un tiempo para poder decirlo en inglés, por favor, Isabel.
Perfecto. Ok, perfecto. Pido que los mapas finales permitan a los latinos
I'm asking that the maps permit the Latins, the Latinos
de Nevada elegir
of Nevada
funcionarios que puedan
to be eligible, to be able to
ayudar a mí y a mi familia durante los próximos 10 años.
to help her and the rest of the Latinos within the next 10 years.
Como madre, siempre estoy pensando en cómo pagar las cuentas y la educación de mis hijos.
As a mother, I am always looking to figure out how to pay my bills and how to pay my children's education.
Les pido que
I'm
los mapas
asking that the maps
tengan en cuenta las familias latinas
to have consideration of the
más
Hispanic
pobres
families
y de bajos ingresos.
and the lower income
Yes,
wages, the lower wages. Dijo ingresos, ¿verdad? Lower wages.
Ajá, de los ingresos. Y también quería decirles,
I also
no sé
wanted
si puedo
to
poner
say
esto. Yo quería hacer algo que estamos ahorita, estamos oyendo como organización que no están apareciendo los mapas. Eso me preocupa a mí porque no podemos poner levantar nuestra voz y decir que no nos gusta y que sí nos gusta.
she is worried
Entonces quería
that
ver si
there's
pueden
not.
checar.
She is worried that there's not enough organizations so the community can hear the Hispanic voices when regarding to the maps.
Y el sistema, y a ver si por favor les pido que revisen computadoras y sistemas para poder obtener más información
And if
correcta.
and she's asking that more computers or more information is available so they can raise their voices and have more information regarding maps.
Sí, porque no estamos accesando a los mapas y no estamos pudiendo hacer comentarios.
They are not able to access the maps and they're not able to do leave comments or make comments.
Y se los voy a agradecer mucho. Muchas gracias por su tiempo.
She would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Broadcasting, I just want to make sure that I'm correct. Was that the last individual that we would translate for?
Yes, Chair, you are correct. I do not believe we have anyone else requiring Spanish translation at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have, and thank you so much, Ms. Sanchez. Do we have additional callers on the line?
Yes, Chair, we do.
Okay, let's take the next three, and then we will return down here to the room in Carson City.
Thank you. If you would like to testify in opposition of SB 1, please press star 9 now or raise hand in your Zoom window to take your place in the queue. You will be prompted to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Tammy Tiger, Tammi Tiger, calling on behalf of the Las Vegas Indian Center, and I'm also calling today to speak in opposition to the maps proposed in SB1. At the Indian Center, we organized a team of indigenous youth to collect over 30 communities of interest throughout Southern Nevada to ensure our voices would help to shape our future. We echo the concerns raised thus far in opposition by the Nevadans Count Coalition. I would like to highlight another point, however, because as a citizen of a tribal nation, one tribe's sovereignty is all tribes' sovereignty. Nevada Legislature has an opportunity to get this right when it comes to respecting tribal boundaries, despite not formally engaging them in this process. We understand that you are trying to use county boundaries, however, tribal boundaries are set by federal law and should take precedence across all other jurisdictional boundaries. Tribes have a government-to-government relationship that starts with the federal government. When they reach out to their representatives on issues regarding public lands or their reservation lands, it's to their U.S. senators and Congress people. That's where it starts. Please review your current districts and reconsider those maps that crack tribal lands. I am continuing with more civics engagement and education reviews up north next week, and I hope I have a success story to share of how Nevada respected tribal sovereignty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 682, please press *6 now to unmute yourself. Caller with the last three digits of 902, please continue.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Darielis Rodriguez, DARIELYS RODRIGUEZ. I am with Mi Familia Vota, Nevada. Nevada added 404,000 residents, with about 4 out of 10 or 161,000 new Nevadans identifying as Latinx according to 2020 U.S. Census. Overall, Nevada's Latinx population share stands at 29% and the CVAP at 25%. Latinxes are now the largest minority group in Nevada. According to Pew, Latinx were 20% of the Nevada electorate in 2020. Instead of the Latinx community gaining political voice, the proposed redistricting congressional map has decreased the political power of the Latinx community. In no single congressional district do Latinx achieve more than 32% CVAP share. Most concerning, in 2011, CD1 was redrawn to be 45% Latinx, 35% Caucasian. In 2021, there's a switch, and CD1 would be 35% Latinx and 45% Caucasian. CD1 has been the seat that traditionally has been best represented the substantive interests of the Latinx community at the federal level. Now the proposed 2021 congressional map decreases Latinx voting power by cracking and splitting the Latinx East-West Las Vegas community into 3 congressional districts, CD1, CD3, and CD4. The Voting Rights Act requires that whenever possible, map drawers create districts where a cohesive and distinct minority group can elect a candidate of their choice. It is possible to draw a CD1 that has 50% Latinx population and is legally defensible. However, we believe that every community of interest should be fairly represented in a manner that reflects their political preferences. CD1 should target between 40 to 50% Latinx presentation. CD4 would maintain its majority-minority character, and CD3 should maintain a Latinx voter population that can influence policy. Several alternative proposals have been submitted to the Nevada Legislature to accomplish these goals. CD1 is currently drawn and is a working-class community, immigrant, and
largely Latinx, where median income is $30,000 to $40,000. The new map radically reconstitutes CD1 so that it now absorbs Henderson suburbs of Green Valley, Anthem, McDonald Ranch, and Seven Hills. It adds Boulder and rural Clark County up to the Arizona border. The more populous Henderson suburbs are communities that are exclusive, where voters are college educated and family incomes are in excess of $100,000. A congressional representative in the new CD1 must now position herself as middle of the road. The voice of the West East Las Vegas community would start from compromise, not the strong advocacy that our
Caller,
working
thank
families
you. That
need.
is your 3 minutes.
Nevada-
Thank you, caller. That's your 3 minutes. If you have any additional comments, please submit them in the record in writing. Broadcasting, next caller, please. And as I stated before, that we'll take one more caller, and then we'll move back to the room, and then we will return to the phones if necessary.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Aimer Cespedes. IMER CESPEDES. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm calling in opposition to the current maps. As a Latino, I feel like these maps are sending a message to the Latino community. We don't want you in one district. East Las Vegas is not your home. Please make sure the maps represent Latinos in CD1. This is another form of family separation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will return to Carson City. If there's anyone interested in testifying in opposition, please approach. Okay, we do not see anyone here in Carson City wishing to make testimony in opposition against Senate Bill 1. So broadcasting, we will return to the phones. Do we have any additional callers?
Yes, Chair, we do. If you recently just joined us, we are currently in opposition of SB 1. To testify in opposition, please press *9 now on your phone or raise hand in your Zoom window. You will be prompted to unmute when it is your turn to speak.
And also to remind the callers that please, after you state your first and last name, to spell your name so that we have it perfect for the record, because all of everything in this hearing, including the testimonies, do come in written minutes so that we can review them and make sure that they are exact. So again, please, we want to make sure we have your names and everything else correct for the record. So that's why we're asking you to spell your name.
Hi, my name is Cherise Gress. My name is CHARISSEGRESS. Good afternoon, members of the community, and I am also calling to oppose the proposed maps. Latinos do not support maps that separate us. For once, listen to Latinos, not to the current maps. No to the current maps. Okay.
Caller, is that the end of your testimony?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I will say it again. It was.
Continue.
Okay, good morning. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Cherise Gress, CHARISSEGRESS. And I am also calling to oppose the proposed maps. Latinos do not support maps that separate us. For once, listen to Latinos. No to the current maps. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sylvia Lazos, Lazos. I am from Southern Nevada, and I have been involved in Latino community leadership for the last 20 years. I am testifying as well in opposition to the congressional redistricting maps and want to suggest that maps that we were able to upload successfully this morning into the website, maps 741 and 748, 741 and 748 are viable alternatives that present the Nevada Legislature with a win-win. In 741, it is based on the old Congressional District 1 and would increase Latino representation to 40%. And 748 is an improved version of Demi Falcone's map, which was originally submitted a couple of days ago, and that would increase representation to 42%. I think that what you have been hearing most of all is the sense of the Latino community and the working class community of CD1 saying, in the proposed map, there is such a joining of disparate communities that this working class community would no longer be heard as clearly as before. In both 741 and 748, a substantial portion of the Green Valley, Anthem, McDonald Ranch, very affluent suburbs would no longer be part of CD1. So please consider a win-win and consider these maps for adoption.
Thank you for your testimony. And with that, I'm handing the gavel back to Chair Orangel.
Thank you, Chair Miller, and thank you, Professor Lazos. Broadcasting, do we have anyone else in the queue in opposition who wishes to speak?
Yes, we do, Chair. Please stand by.
Hello.
Yes, please state your name and please go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Isis Juliao, ISSIS JULIAO. I am calling in opposition of the current maps. They do not represent Latinos, and if you support them, you do not represent us, and you need to be removed from office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
Broadcasting, do we have anyone else in the queue who wishes to speak in opposition?
Yes, we do. Caller, please continue.
Hi, this is John Carr. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please state your name and proceed.
Yes, this is John Carr, JONKARR. I'm the chairman of the Echo County Commission, and I would just like to emphatically agree with your callers that are saying please keep districts whole, whether they be a Latino community, whether it be a rural community. The more you can do that, I think it's better in the interest of all the citizens of Nevada. And so that would be the part I would really like to emphasize to our Assembly and Senate here, that is so critical to communities to be whole, to have a whole county, the city, all as one, so that they can have a say. Rurals are such a minority right now group in our population, and so to have that voice, I think it's critical. But I also think you keep hearing the problems people are having on seeing the maps and other technical difficulties. So I hope you guys pause on this and really rethink this and be able to hear the voices of Nevada on some of the problems you're having, but also on redistricting. Please keep communities whole. I appreciate you guys' work. Thank you again. And John Carr, thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Chair, you have more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. And Broadcasting, just to be safe, in case anybody had problems calling in, logging in, could you check and see if there's anyone who wishes to speak neutral, support?
Yes, Chair, I absolutely can. If you would like to testify in neutral or in support of SB1, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue or raise hand in your Zoom window. You will need to unmute when it is your turn to speak. Again, if you missed your chance to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on SB 9, please press raise hand in your Zoom window or *9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Hello.
Yes, please state and spell your name, and please proceed with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Bev Stenjum. I am a resident of Somerset, and I agree with the other callers. We'd like to keep our community whole, and I'm against the redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
If you recently just joined us, we are currently taking testimony in support, opposition, or neutral on SB 1. If you would like to testify, please press raise hand in your Zoom window or *9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
And broadcasting, we have someone here in the committee room who'd like to speak, so if you can hold on one sec, we'll come back to broadcasting in a sec. Please state your name and please proceed. Oh, please turn your microphone on. Unfortunately, we can't. There's a button right in front of the microphone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Amy Koo, AMYKOO, and I'm the Outreach Manager with the Asian Community Development Council. Between the 2010 and 2020 census, Nevada's AANHPI, or Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community, has grown more than 45%, with the majority of the growth taking place in the Southwest Las Vegas. Nevada is only one of only 6 states where the AANHPI community makes up more than 10% of the state population, with 12.5%, or over 389,000 Asian and Pacific Islanders residing in Nevada. ACDC worked collaboratively with the Nevada Counts Coalition last year to ensure a complete count, while also combating misinformation and scare tactics about the proposed addition of a citizenship question that was meant to harm our community. During the months leading up to redistricting, we held community meetings to gather community input on the proposed district maps and learn about the places of interest in Chinatown, Asiatown, Spring Mountain Corridor, Enterprise, and Southwest regions. We trained community members to draw district maps and encouraged them to submit their own maps to the legislative website. However, because of the website, it was incredibly difficult to submit these maps correctly. This has disenfranchised members of our community from having their voices heard. While we believe that the current proposed map by joint majority is in line with the long-term empowerment for the growing AANHPI community in Nevada, we do not want this opportunity to come at the expense of other communities of interest. We urge the committee to keep communities of interest at the forefront of the discussion while considering these maps. We support the maps presented by the Nevadans Coalition because we believe that this is equitable representation of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And while I'm back in the committee room, anyone else who wishes to speak here in Carson City in the committee room? Support, opposition, neutral? Okay, broadcasting. Is there anyone else on the phone lines who wishes to be heard? Support, opposition, or neutral?
Yes, Chair, please stand by.
Hello?
Yes, thank you for calling in. Yes, please state your name, spell your name, and proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Roman, CHRISROMAN. I am calling in opposition to SB 1. I would ask you to please reconsider and ensure, in particular, that Latino voters and the community as a whole there is not diluted or in any way diminished in terms of its influence. Latinos contribute, as do everybody else, but we contribute in every field of endeavor. And it seems to me that a functioning and productive society would encourage participation by Latinos and other groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, is there anyone else on the line who wishes to be heard?
Yes, Chair. Caller, please continue.
Thank you. My name is Carol Feinberg, F like Frank, I-N-E-B-E-R-G. I live in Del Webb, portion of Somerset in northwest Reno. I am radically opposed to this proposed redistricting. The maps are very, very hard to read online. I've been following them, and I cannot read them. It was not until I heard from my senator and my assembly representative that I learned the disastrous results that could result from this proposed maps. I am very opposed to this. We are an homogeneous neighborhood in all of Somerset, and now you're breaking us up and putting us up with rurals in Elko. That's unbelievable. Completely disconnected from Reno, where we live. Completely unrepresented and disenfranchised. Please reconsider. Go back to the drawing board on this redistricting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, you have no more callers at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. With that, unless there's anyone else who wishes to speak, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 1. And the last item on our agenda is public comment. So if anyone, I want to remind the public that this comment period is not a rehearing on the legislative measure that we considered, but rather an opportunity to discuss general matters that fall within the purview of this committee. Please note, public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. We'll start here in Carson City, and then we'll go to the phone lines and to Zoom. Good afternoon. Please state your name and proceed.
Thank you. Ben Chanor, Benchallinor, with Faith in Action Nevada. I feel like I would be remiss if I did not say something. As an organization that works within the Latino community, it's very difficult for us to organize because they feel scared to be able to come to speak in their own voice. And I understand it's sometimes difficult to make sure you line up the proper translation services, line up the proper system for it. And I just really hope that in the future, whether it be a special session or regular session, we find the right way that we can make sure that our communities, any community, has the ability to come speak in their own voice. As someone who grew up translating for my parents, and I still translate for our leaders, it's difficult, and I completely understand what one has to go through and make sure that they're being heard. So I just please hope that we can fix that for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, Mr. Challoner. Good afternoon.
Annette Magnus for the record, ANNETTE, MAGNUS with Battle War in Progress. As a communicator, I want to say that I have a staff person in the audience crying right now because of what was just happening up here with the translation services. We are talking about disenfranchising Latino voters, and you have translation services that aren't actually translating what the members of those communities are saying. And I don't blame the translator. I don't know that y'all prepared her for what was happening up here. But let me just say, I'm a white person. I don't understand Spanish, and I knew that wasn't correct. And if you're going to have translation services, it's not enough just to check a box because that's what you were doing. You actually need to have real translation happening so that their voices are heard accurately. We are talking about a Latino district that is going to be split up, and you can't even have proper translation services for Latino constituents in that district. It's shameful. And it reminds me what I was saying in my testimony earlier. You don't listen to us. We come up, we engage, we go to community meetings, we ask to be involved in the process, and once again, here we are. And it's so disappointing to me. So my ask to all of you is, when this happens again in the future, like Ben said, please do better. Because it's not just the Latino community, it's all of our communities. We drove all the way up here to be a part of this process, and this is how you engage with us. It's disrespectful.
Thank you for your comments. And again, I just want to reiterate what I said a few moments ago, or a few callers back, that everything that's stated here is on the record. And as they're going through the minutes, there's an extensive process that we go through to ensure accuracy for everything. So if there was any inconsistencies in the translation, those will be able to be addressed at that time, as well as we go over the minutes as well. So that's also sometimes why it takes a little bit of time for those minutes. So we do hear you and we appreciate your comments. And of course, we are striving for that accuracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Miller. Anyone else who wishes to make public comment here in Carson City? Right, broadcasting, if we can go to the phone lines and to Zoom. If there's anyone who wishes to make public comment, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to participate in public comment, please press raise hand in your Zoom window or *9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. You will be prompted to unmute when it is your turn to speak.
Yes, my name is Cliff Eklund. I'm County Commissioner in Elko County. I didn't get through on the opposition testimony, but the way your maps are drawn, you're dividing Elko County basically in half. And
Mr. Eklund, I apologize you weren't able to get through, but this is public comment. So we have closed the hearing on the bill. But if you have any public comment you'd like to make about anything under the purview of this committee, please proceed.
I tried to get in on testimony, but I didn't. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Randy Case. That's RANDYCASE. I'm a citizen of Carson City, and I would just like to say that this meeting has been very disheartening for me and my family as to how the government is handling the issue. We're nonpartisan, and regardless of whether you like the maps or don't like the maps, there's such an overwhelming amount of opposition. It's astounding that it's scheduled to go immediately into work session. So I would ask you to maybe go back to the drawing board and really listen to your constituents. Have a nice day.
Again, if you recently just joined us, we are currently in public comment. If you would like to participate in public comment, please press *9 now on your phone or raise hand in your Zoom window to take your place in the queue. You will be prompted to unmute when it is your turn to speak. Caller, please continue.
Hello.
Please go ahead, sir. Please state your name and proceed.
Thank you. This is Keith Metcalf, METCALFE, from Carson City. I've been listening to the meeting. First, I was unable to get in to voice my support for the bill and for the maps. Unfortunately, much of what I heard are the similar tactics used, particularly in the South, by a particular political party to put all of the people of color into one district, diffuse it, and give extraordinary power to the white community. So I would hope that my colleagues in Nevada would understand what they're asking for and what the consequences of that. I think it's a great map to start with, probably some corrections to be made around the edges, but by and large, a very good job. And I would hope that the majority on the committee holds true to the intent of the maps and moves forward with it. Thank you very much.
Chair, your public line is open and working, and you have no more callers at this time.
All right, thank you. With that, believe that I think that's our last agenda item, unless anyone else wishes to make any public comment. So we will adjourn this joint meeting of the Assembly and Senate committees. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.